Hello, Internet! It's time! Welcome again to another episode of Deep Listens. I am your host, Gino, that Pinguino Grieco. Today we are finishing Final Fantasy IX. This is the Final Fantasy IX final podcast. And I am joined on this endeavor, at least initially, by Peter, the Black Mage Busby.
What's going on, everybody? I don't know if the Black Mage is, quite conducive to my combat style, but I'm honored to be placed in the same class as Vivi. He is legit, despite my misgivings initially. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in as we conclude this endeavor we started so long ago.
And I am also joined by Chris, the Blue Mage, ZombiePie, Redacted.
Why did you have to give me the worst character?
Well,
you gave me
that's
Quina.
A question for you to answer.
I like Quina.
Quina just he/she is insatiable and voracious. If two words, insatiable, voracious. And
redundant, Gino.
Your consumption of Final Fantasy, I feel, shows that you're spiritually on the same sort of wavelength.
We'll talk about it later, but I think that I've found my spirit animal while playing this game.
I'm hoping that's a good thing, and not like a peyote nightmare in Arizona Waste.
It's a little bit of both.
The Space Coyote.
Yeah, the Space Coyote voiced by Johnny Cash is strong with this game.
So I'm going to go ahead and so we finished Final Fantasy IX. I've got this large glass decanter of brown liquid to celebrate. Go ahead and pour some of this in this.
That's correct.
Why do you have a decanter of brown liquid?
My Vivi.
We drink an alcoholic beverage whenever we finish a Final Fantasy game.
We've done this with everyone, so let me pour some in there.
So I have a Dr. Pepper with a glass of rum. I normally would, as a normal human being, would be drinking that with Coca-Cola, but Dr. Pepper is going to get it done. I need the doctor. Doctor. Cheers, gentlemen.
Salute.
Another Final Fantasy game.
Done. We did it.
We did it.
So you listener, oof, that's a good. You picking that up?
Yeah.
It's a good burn.
Yeah.
Going down. We are, if you've noticed, we're missing Billy again. That is because Billy's schedule was a little bit complicated. He will be joining us midway through the show, but our schedule, we do not stop for nothing, so we were not going to wait around for him. Also, the beginning of this show, we were going to be discussing some stuff that he didn't actually play, so he wasn't going to have much to say about it anyway.
All's fair that ends well.
At the end of our last podcast, we discussed the end of Disc 3, and so we start with the beginning of Disc 4, which there's a little bit of story bits here and there, but it's largely a side quest-a-thon in terms of what ZP actually had to do. So, at the end of Disc 4... Oh, and once again, if you want to get in touch with the show, at DeepListensPod, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com, or deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have many a comment section. So, at the end of Disc 3, Terra gets blown up real bad. You, the main cast, gets this sweet airship, the Invincible, and you load as many genomes onto that airship as possible and flee Terra. And
yes, correct.
You come back, and the planet is awash in mist again, even though you defeated the Iffa at the midpoint of Disc 2, pretty much.
Did we beat the Iffa, or did we just beat Soul Cage?
You beat Soul Cage. You beat part of the Iffa, at least.
Oh, see, I guess I didn't realize they were distinct like that.
Yeah, is Soul Cage created by Garland, Kuja, or was Soul Cage always at the Iffa?
So the whole Iffa and Soul Cage is all created by Garland and the people of Terra. Okay. All of that's artificial, which is why.
So he just planted this giant tree on this planet and nobody noticed.
Well, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's a continent that's partially. It's only lightly.
That's right next to this
in mist.
It's just right next to this massive village of summoners.
It's near them, but it's strongly implied that that tree was planted a really long time ago. So who's to say, who would have noticed it and what, if they would have even figured out what the hell it was doing. But you come back, there's mist again, and there's this gigantic purple floating orb over the Ifa tree. You take a
ominous.
Yep. There's a quick sojourn to the Black Mage Village, which is now inhabited again, and you drop off the genomes to the Black Mage Village and just kind of say, hey, you guys...
They live here now.
They live here now.
Deal with it.
And what did you guys think of the first, the interactions between the genomes and the Black Mages?
Where, the genomes are, figuring out everything?
Yeah.
This is the most forced sense of humor. I get what they were trying to show is that they could learn together, but it was very forced.
Yeah.
And the humor and the joy there is exactly what you think it is. It's not more than the sum of its parts. It's not less than the sum of its parts. It's the exact sum of its parts.
Is the name of the chocobo a reference I'm not getting? Or something I just overlooked while I was playing?
I don't know what the reference is. I would have assumed it'd be named Choco because in Final Fantasy V the chocobo's name is Choco, and it's pretty much the only named chocobo up until that point. But
Okay.
Bobby
It's like
Corwin's
Bobby-
just...
Yeah, Bobby Corwin.
It's just a great name. Oh, it might be Boko.
It is.
It might be a long name for Boko, because Boko is the chocobos. Actually, it's Boko from Final Fantasy V. So maybe it's just Bobby Corwin and then the acronym Boko.
Okay, I know it makes sense. Well, it makes sense in sort of a Final Fantasy sort of way.
Yeah.
It's like they went with... I don't know if I don't know what emotionally I was supposed to get out of the scene. I don't know if it was supposed to be played for humor or if it was trying to be dour or serious. So I didn't really react all that much to many of the scenes.
It was an interesting sort of amalgam of the two, because it's supposed to be humorous. I'm oh, what are customers? But then Amarant's can anyone replace lost time? And it takes a pretty quick turn.
Yeah, it's kind of got a weird dual function since the interactions between the genomes and the Black Mages are all pretty comical, because the Black Mages are these, short-lived, incredibly emotional beings who don't have a lot of practical knowledge, and then the genomes are these immortal beings with no emotional intelligence at all, but a ton of functional knowledge. And so you're kind of mashing together these two diametrically opposed races that have very similar origins, but they don't do a whole lot with it in that scene, other than you start to see the genomes kind of take on a little bit more personality, and you see the Black Mages start to kind of figure out the world a little bit more explicitly, which I enjoyed.
And I appreciate how it's not master and it's not a master and teacher relationship. It's student and student.
Yeah, it's almost a Socratic method sort of thing, where everyone's just kind of learning through discussion.
So I didn't really like the scene, but there's something in the Black Mage Village that I, by complete chance, experienced there when trying to complete one of my many side quest assignments for this podcast, is when you go back to the Black Mage Village and you go to the cemetery, Mikoto, who is Zidana's sister, is interacting with the village elder 388 or whatever his number is. And they have a really poignant conversation about why do you bury these people? Why do you bury these people? They don't care if you put them in the ground. And then he has a conversation with Mikoto that essentially sums to, I don't bury the dead for them. I bury the dead for me. And
wow. I've never seen that scene.
That scene is amazing. Oh, that scene's a really good scene to where, he basically just says, I don't bury the dead for you. I don't bury the dead for them. I do it for me. And that is kind of what I wanted the entirety of the initial introduction to Disc 4 to be, but I eventually got it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think your pacing is the pacing that you personally experienced is pretty different, considering ordinarily these side quests, if we played on a normal schedule, you probably would have stumbled across some of these side quests midway through Disc 3 or earlier on Disc 1 for the Chocograph stuff, and instead it was kind of all backloaded onto Disc 4, so it kind of screwed up the natural pacing of the game.
Which is something we need to bring up.
Yeah.
I played the fourth disc the worst way possible.
Yes.
I didn't pace it out. So full disclosure to all of the viewers and audience members, and even to you, Gino, I played all of Disc 4 over the course of a day and a half, including all of the side quests.
Which is totally doable.
It's totally doable, but you don't. Also, if you really like chocobos, this is the game for you. There's a lot of stuff to do with chocobos. Do not do all of the chocobo stuff in one sitting, as I did. Don't do that. Otherwise, you'll start sending really frantic Steam messages to Gino talking about how you want to give up on the game.
Yep. He got
How
over
many
it,
times? I think I sent you like 3 or 4 messages. Like, I can't do this anymore. I give up. I'm done.
Yeah, so I guess a good place to start with the side quest is the Chocobo side quest. It's as good as any of these.
Oh, God.
So let you vent for a little bit, then I will explain why I still enjoy this, even though I can admit academically that it is not the most riveting content in this game.
It's... I find the entire Chocograph, Hot and Cold, Choco's Paradise, I find it to be incredibly disrespectful to the audience or the player, because you will do exactly what the game asks you to do. You will work within its parameters, you will follow its logic, and it's still not good enough for the game. Because in these quest lines, the drops, the areas in which you have to hit the B button or whatever the button is to dig or try and find these things, you need to fit that parameter. And there's no wiggle room, there's no passion, or they're designed to be nightmare factories. Everything related to chocobos is a nightmare. An unmitigated, unbelievable nightmare. And it's kind of only slightly worth your time. The digging or trying to find the chocographs is one of the most frustrating things in the game, because the drop rate for those chocographs is so ridiculously low in the very beginning of the game, to where you will spend hours getting nothing, doing exactly what the game expects you to do. And the solution isn't to get better at the mechanics, it's to tolerate the wall that it puts in front of you, which is its soul-crushingly low drop rate for its story-critical items. And it's there to kind of, I don't know what the full intent is, but I basically believe that they created this high barrier of entry to just weed out, like, are you willing to tolerate this level of inanity in order to get the least amount of story benefit? And in the end, the reward is some interesting items and some kind of cool set pieces, but no forward progress on the main story or any of the story critical characters. So had you not asked me to do this, I probably would not have done it. And I probably would have been a better person as a result. I yelled and swore at this game in ways that
the rest of the game did
normally
not make you.
That exactly. That's another thing, is that as a result, I have an emotional gambit, or the emotions that this game has subjected me to is slightly weighed against it as a result of
playing that?
forcing myself to play the chocographs.
Okay. So the reason why I still enjoy this, personally, is there is actually a skill factor to the chocographs. Not in terms of what the drops are, but in terms of how quickly you can get them. I played this game recently with my grandma, and when we got to this section, one of the things that stood out to me was, for me, like when I had all the time in the world when I was younger, the barrier to entry of time was not a thing. Like, I was fine plugging away at this. However, I noticed that for me, I could probably get like 8 or 9 items in a single playthrough, anywhere from like 5 to 9 or 10. I very rarely got fewer than 5. For her, whenever she played, it was more along the lines of if she got 2 or 3, she'd be, thrilled. With that aspect in mind, this game actually, it's not purely random. The more skillful you are at knowing where the hotspots are and detecting where the items are, you can get through it faster. But also, it's something that is kind of a mindless time sink in a game that otherwise doesn't have them, which I personally...
Is good.
In most games, I don't like mindless time sinks, but I do know that there are plenty of people who will put on a game like Destiny and just play it for an hour or a half hour just to kill time and listen to a podcast. And this game doesn't really have anything like that other than the chocograph stuff, or maybe grinding or playing Tetramaster. And I think the chocograph stuff is the best of those kind of time sinks. The rewards when you actually put the time in are game-breaking. And I think that the way the chocographs as a concept are implemented is actually pretty excellent in terms of what it makes you do, what it asks you to do with the game after you actually get the chocographs. Because once you're kind of going around treasure hunting, you have this treasure map and you have to go find this location, it really asks you to spend time on the world map and get to know this planet, basically, in a more intimate way. And it makes full use of this 3D world map in a way that other Final Fantasy games don't necessarily. Like, in Final Fantasy VII, there are a handful of visitable locations, but there's nothing on the world map itself that is hidden or discoverable. There are a couple locations you'll find, and you'll enter them, like once you get the gold chocobo or the different colored chocobos, and those are cool. But it's not quite the same as finding a crack in a wall and then feeding your chocobo a dead pepper and having them dig in the hole and find treasure. So all of a sudden, this world map kind of takes on a sense of wonder. At least when I was little, it did. That I don't know. Maybe if I round a corner, there'll just be items somewhere. And it really made you become familiar with that world.
I have actually a few objections to what you're arguing. I will agree that certainly the game requires and encourages you to explore the world, but the technical limitations of this game, the technical limitations of the resolution in particular for this game, makes what you're describing unnecessarily difficult. Trying to analyze pixels, trying to realign these small little captioned images of the chocographs with a very specific location, and the implementation of these mechanics is unnecessarily frustrating.
And
trying to match the chocograph that said ocean, and then there's 90% ocean water, and then one little bit where it says that's a reef with that specific location is unbelievably difficult. And the barrier of entry to get that reward is unbelievably high. And what it unfortunately results in is that in order for you to get the greatest amount of reward is you do need to play this game with a guide. It is impossible to do certain parts of these side quests without some form of guidance from a person who's already played it, already toiled away. And that's poor game design.
Forgive an ignorant question, but isn't that, I mean, I've never played too many Final Fantasy games, but isn't that part of just the game? Like that Final Fantasy is supposed to be that intricate to the point where it'd be difficult to play without guidance.
I think some of that is true, Pete. Like, the Final Fantasy guidebooks were, of the guidebooks that I saw, they were some of the more popular that people would actually buy. And Final Fantasy IX, unfortunately, has the worst guidebook of any of them.
Yeah, there's. We mentioned it earlier, but the guidebook for Final Fantasy IX was
trash. It was
trash.
meant to be a tie-in for like a
website.
So it was a terrible, terrible guidebook. Which, because it's such a terrible guidebook, I can tell you, ZP, I beat the Chocobo side quest without a guide because the guidebook, even though it's supposed to guide you, is trash. It doesn't tell you where any of the chocographs are. It just tells you that this side quest exists. So,
but what joy am I meant to have in trying?
The way I did it was I spent hours upon hours pixel hunting, and you know what?
I don't find that appealing at all. What you're describing is something that a crazy person would enjoy doing.
No. It's not something a crazy person would enjoy doing. It's something a child would love. Or someone who has a lot of free time, or who, like, if Billy was on, I'm sure he would tell you, like, that's the kind of thing that he might enjoy. Just kind of doing this kind of grindy, mindless thing that gets him big rewards.
You mentioned,
there's an audience for this kind of thing, and it's not me anymore. But when I was in that audience,
I
really appreciated it.
But, like, trying to find those cracks in the mountain where the texture for that crack looks exactly like the rest of the textures for the fucking mountains, how am I supposed to parse that logic out? How am I supposed to parse out that these small little blinking white lights or bubbles are meant to be places in which I can dive into the ocean and get into? And it's cases like that where the limitations of the game, either the designers put this shit into the game because they were like, man, we got to put something in for the really, really dedicated bunch, and let's do it the most assy, most dick move possible in terms of the design. Because the design of these levels and the design of these side quests is not enjoyable.
I would say it's not enjoyable for you, just the way that, like, Fury's design is not enjoyable for me, but there is an audience for this kind of thing. It's just not us anymore. Or you ever, but it's not me anymore. I can't play.
Look, I spend a good amount of time. You mentioned Destiny. I find that comparison to be a red herring, because Destiny creates a culture of that sort of behavior within its game. And it rewards that behavior after creating that culture in its game. Final Fantasy IX does not create a culture of pixel analysis, of inane faffing about in its game. And the worst part is that much of this information is not even front-loaded to the audience. So how is honest? The only way that you really find out that there are dive spots
is you can find that out when you go to Chocobo's Paradise.
When you go to Chocobo's Paradise, and he's like, "Hey, there's more treasure for you to find out." It's like, "Oh, word."
Yeah, but like some of those treasures are awesome.
Gino, the final weapon for fucking Zidane, they don't even have any visual hint for you as to where to find it.
They say, one of them, it might be Fat Chocobo. Someone says, go check out where the Shimmering Isles used to be. And the hitbox there for the dive is just like the whole segment. There's no...
No, I wasted 2 or 3 dead peppers on that.
That's not that many.
But then every dead pepper that I use, I have to go back to Chocobo's Lagoon or Chocobo's Forest, toil away at that mechanic, hit the button to try and find those dead peppers, dig them up, use them. Oh, shit. I only got 1 out of the 8 items that I got.
I don't know about you, but by the end of the Chocobo stuff, I had a surplus of dead peppers. And I think you can buy them, too.
But it's designed, the design for the Chocobo, and I briefly talked about this, it is an exponential graph. That's how this mission is designed, because for It took me, and full disclosure, it took me about 10 hours to complete the Chocobo stuff here.
Oof.
It took me about 10 hours, start to finish. You hit a wall. I hit a wall that basically caused me to experience an existential crisis, as Gino can attest. Where
this is something where
you have to subject your life. You have to get down on your knees. You have to pray to the random die roll goddess, and you got to pray, and you got to ask her to be nice to you, because if she's not nice to you, you ain't getting no dinner. You're not getting nothing.
So the game does give you a little bit of a boost the further you get in. Every time you upgrade your Chocobo to a different color, the animation for digging gets faster. And as you find more and more chocographs and items like that, your beak will get stronger, which makes you dig further every time you dig.
You know what would have been way better than that is if the area in which you dug got bigger, rather than the animation gets faster.
It's fair. And I think that this is an example of playing this in 10 hours straight is a miserable experience. If you played like an hour a sitting over the course of a 40-hour game, it might not be so galling. But the rewards for doing it, it's interesting to point out that a lot of them are callbacks to earlier Final Fantasy games.
Sure.
Genji armor is from Final Fantasy V. There's Ragnarok, which is a sword that's kind of the best sword in a lot of the early Final Fantasy games. You get the Maximilian, which I think is a great armor set from some of the earlier games. A lot of the high-level items like ribbons and circlets are larger callbacks.
Yeah.
So and I think you even get some really good cards.
Yeah, you do
as well. So a lot of this is just explicitly this is a reward for the most hardcorest of people, and I personally enjoy finding Chocobo's Paradise. And when I say Chocobo's Paradise, Pete, you did not see it, but it is an island.
It's an island
in the corner of the world,
full of chocobos, I assume.
Full of chocobos and waterfalls, and just they all talk.
They talk?
It's a paradise.
Yes, the chocobos are able to talk. Real quick.
There's a fat chocobo with a crown.
Well, I wanted to talk about this. You uncover one of your first chests, or for me, it was my second chest. And it pops up. It says, oh no, all this gas is coming out. You are getting sleepy.
Yes.
And then it immediately transitions to
Chocobo Dream World.
Chocobo Dream World, where Choco, the chocobo that you have commandeered from Mini, is flying around in space and then ends up on the bottom of a small planet, walks up, and then there's this giant chocobo with a crown on his head. He's the king of the chocobos, and he's called Fat Chocobo. Not King Chocobo, not any other name for a chocobo. Fat Chocobo.
Woo!
And you guys remember Frog Fractions?
Yes.
Frog Fractions?
I've played Frog Fractions. Pete has not played Frog Fractions. Don't spoil Frog Fractions.
I'm not going to spoil Frog Fractions because this reminded me of Frog Fractions, to where the first time I saw Fat Chocobo, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm back on. Give me all this trippy rainbow neon bright as if I'm on peyote cutscene stuff.
Yeah.
And then, Pete, he waves his hands in the air, well, actually his feathers, and he changes your chocobo into a different color, and now you can traverse through different parts of the environment.
Yeah.
And all the time, he's saying, come back to your home world. We are waiting for you. Like some sort of weird chocobo cult.
Okay, I've seen that.
Yeah. But
yeah, 'cause remember, I was turned blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you turn blue, then you light blue, then red, then dark blue, and eventually gold. And every single time, Fat Chocobo's like, good job. Good job. You did
Finding
it.
treasures. You're getting that money.
You're getting this money. So that's why I would like to say, Fat Chocobo is my spirit animal. I related to fat chocobo. He sits on that throne. He wears that crown. He declares who gets to go to Chocobo's paradise.
And who is cast out.
Who is cast out? Zidane got cast out.
Yeah.
Mene
Zidane
got cast out. And then Zidane is all like, oh, shit. How do I get off this island? And he tries to ride on Mene. And that's not going to work. So he has to swim. And what I think I'm slightly conflicted about is so was the whole point of this side quest, because I thought the visuals and the actual world that you get were far more interesting than any of the material goods. And we'll probably talk about this later because I didn't know how to use them. And I don't know what they accomplished out of, like, am I supposed to emotionally connect with Meanie and Choco? Am I supposed to, because tonally, it makes no sense to have Chocobo's Paradise. It makes no sense. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing.
The answer is twofold. One, I think you're supposed to connect with the world because, like I said, it makes the world map have a layer of depth that world maps do not often have. Usually they are just a connective tissue between a series of dungeons and towns and these pre-rendered cutscenes. They are connective tissue. Whereas this game uses it as something a little bit more. Like there's some texture here in the world map. There are
literal texture.
Yes. You have to see textures on these walls. But also, they do this with other things like the friendly monsters or the ragtime mouse, which I don't know if you ran into either of those.
I did Ragtime Mouse once, and I was like, how many more times do I need to do this? 17? Fuck that.
Yeah, so you don't need to do it. It's just there are little things on the world map. So, Pete, the Ragtime Mouse is a random encounter that you can run into in forests.
Is that a mistranslation? Because he looks nothing like a mouse.
No, that's his name. He's the Ragtime Mouse. But you can run
like
into this
ragtime is in like jazz?
No, he's a giant... He's like a clown, but he has a giant mouth. I'm trying to think. The reason why I mentioned mistranslation is the word for mouse and mouth may have been mistranslated from Japanese.
This game doesn't seem to have many translation errors, if any.
No, I'm just saying that maybe someone misunderstood something, and that should have been Ragtime. Essentially, this guy decked from head to toe in red with a giant kind of comical mouth asks you true and false questions, and you have to pick the right one.
Yeah,
okay.
It's basically a game show. It becomes a game show, and if you pick the correct answer, he gives you money. And if you
Are
pick
they
the wrong
Final
answer,
Fantasy questions?
Yes, they're
Final
all
Fantasy 9 questions.
They're all
Okay.
about Final Fantasy IX. And again, Gino, it's really interesting to do it once, but if you want to see that story through to the end, you have to subject yourself to the inanity of the random encounter system, a level of trial and error that I feel does not reward the player's time, is downright disrespectful sometimes.
Yep, and
I think
I have never done it. I have never finished the Ragtime Mouse.
To be perfectly honest, I feel like I have a right to learn more about the world and the context to the environment. And when a game places an undue burden on the player, I think that is just disrespectful.
I agree. I've never finished the Ragtime Mouse, and I've never finished the friendly monster stuff because just the payoff. I never thought it would be good enough to make it worth me running around, running into random battles to hopefully run into the right one. So friendly monsters, Pete, there are some monsters that when you fight them, there's like friendly music, and they'll be slightly altered versions of normal monsters you can run into. So like ghosts are usually these black monsters that'll attack you. You'll run into a like white ghost with a halo, and it will ask you for some ore. And if you give it some ore, it will say, "Thanks, buddy." And then
he goes away. I've seen the friendly. I've seen Ore Guy.
Yeah, so there are several more. There's a ladybug. There's a.
I did it twice, and
on purpose or by accident?
No, on accident, and it was exactly what Gino's saying. It's something to where when it happens, it's kind of cool, and then what unfortunately ends up happening is that it happens once. You're like, man, that's really cool. I want to see how to do this again, and then you find out that it's actually really difficult to have it happen if you don't want to subject yourself to that. So it's like the game introduces this really cool thing, and then its mechanics immediately sabotage that cool thing and your ability to enjoy that cool thing.
Yeah, you can't really cut straight to the fun stuff. But all of these different mechanics that take place on the world map, I think, are at least interesting in terms of making use of the entirety of the game world in a way that some of the other games don't.
That adds unnecessary frustration to the player, asks them to go above and beyond what the game is able to provide within its world. And
sure, but when you compare it to some of the stuff like Yuffie in Final Fantasy VII...
Dude, we're going to come to blows because my immediate next point is I think Chocobo breeding is better than Chocobo hot and cold.
I disagree.
I disagree with what you're... Yeah. At least with Chocobo breeding, there is a logic that I can follow. Breed Chocobos, raise Chocobos, payoff. And if I follow that simple guidance, yes, the burden there is you have to race these Chocobos again and again and again, but...
Hey, ZP, what happens when the Chocobos fuck and then you get the wrong colored Chocobo?
You just soft reboot your game.
Isn't that bullshit randomness?
Yeah, it's total bullshit randomness, but it's not of, I have to take a magnifying glass to the fucking map and then match it to a specific area and then mash B. This is like the worst clicker game ever made.
I don't know about that. There are some bad clicker games. I think we're spending a lot of time on this side quest that ultimately I wanted you to experience it. Just because, one, I thought you might need the items.
I did, oddly enough.
And two, I thought that you, as a connoisseur of bullshit, you would probably...
I appreciated it. Real quick, for those wondering, I got to the air garden. I clicked X on a certain part of the air garden. A giant marble popped up. I lasted about 45 seconds.
Called it.
He cast Meteor twice in a row.
Yeah, that's fucked up, isn't it? That's a fucked up thing for the game to do to you.
So, Pete, for those that don't know, every Final Fantasy game has a super boss that is actually harder than anything in the game proper.
You're talking about Globe Dude?
Yeah, Globe Dude.
Globe Dude, yep.
Ozma,
I only fought him once. He cast Meteor twice in a row, and that was it.
And then he fucking killed you, because that's what he does. He shows up, he's a weird swirly marble man, and he fucking kills you. He's an Eidolon that died or something.
So you've never actually beaten Ozma?
No, fuck that. No, why would no?
Have you ever leveled the character up to 99?
No.
What?
Why would I do that?
I don't know. I thought about
valued my time too much.
Well, then why do you do the Chocobo stuff?
Because at the time I needed those items because I couldn't beat the game without having all the good stuff. That's the reason. Like, I wasn't good at the game.
Yeah,
and that was my way of just like with Final Fantasy VIII, where I just played the card game instead of grinding levels.
Yeah.
In 9, I played the side quests so that I didn't have to grind levels because I still,
I guess you're right.
Every day, hate grinding.
I guess you're right. I guess as bad as the Chocobo stuff here is, at least it gives you some super powerful stuff that kind of breaks the game. And I wish I had known that.
Something that, so if you don't do this all in one burst, this Chocobo side quest will keep you over-leveled or overpowered the entire game. So once you get access to it after Lindblom, you can find items that are routinely 2 or 3 towns ahead of whatever you're about to see for the rest of the game. Like, after Lindblom, you can get a Oak Staff, which it gives you bio. You can buy an Oak Staff on Disc 2. And you can just get it before you go to Gizmaluk's Grotto. Or no. It's after Gizmaluk's Grotto. So before you go to Burmecia, you can just have that. Or later on in the game when you go to the is it the Lost Continent?
Mm-hmm.
The continent with Ibsen's castle.
Yep.
You can go there, and if you have a red Chocobo by then, you can get Kaiser Knuckles for Amarant, which is his second best weapon. and you or maybe second or third best weapon, but it's really strong.
It's up there.
And you can get Freya's ultimate weapon before you go to Terra, before you even go to Olivert.
Yeah.
And they will just be one-shotting dudes for a good long while. So my experience of playing this game for years was just like, yeah, Armorant deals about 7,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 damage for half of Disc 3 and all of Disc 4. So you really have to be that skillful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get a bunch of cool stuff that a normal player would take advantage of in combat and mechanically.
Yeah, so like Shock, that's an ability you don't that's Steiner's best ability, and you don't get access to it unless you do the Chocobo stuff. So
or you think that a different attack is stronger than Shock.
Yep, and that would be dumb. Who would do that?
Let's go down the list. We didn't do blue magic. Get all the blue magic because fuck that. That's stupid.
Yeah,
Tetramaster. Nope. Didn't eat the frogs. Nope.
Get all the frogs.
I did the Knight's House challenge, but I couldn't beat the last one.
That's fine. Pete.
House.
So let's do one that Pete actually participated in.
Oh, okay.
You went to Quan's dwelling, right?
Which one's Quan?
Quan is Vivi's grandpa.
Yes, I did.
You went there with Vivi and Quina?
Yes.
What do you think of Quan's dwelling and the revelations therein?
Now you're going to have to refresh my memory, Gino.
So you go in there, you take Quina and you take Vivi, and when you first go in, you can go there earlier in the game, Vivi will go there, and it's kind of this dilapidated place with like a broken egg, and it's abandoned. And when you go back with Quina and Vivi, Quina will kind of come out of your party and see this gigantic feast in the middle of this empty space, and Zidon's like, what the heck are you even looking at? There's nothing here. And Quinn is seeing this feast like, oh, what should I eat first? And Zidon's like, you're hallucinating. What the hell are you even talking about? And so Quina will then kind of go out onto the balcony of Quan's dwelling, and we'll see Quan's ghost, this kind of ghost queue.
No, man, I don't know if I did that.
Oh, okay. So,
man, you're missing out. You're missing out.
The clock bit.
Yeah, the clock bit will get you some running shoes. Like Garnet will look at it and say it was. That's when I a week before I got.
The
kidnapped.
quick thing is you need to have Quina and Vivi in your party in order to have it happen.
So what happens is Quina sees Quan's ghost, and basically they start talking, and Quina's like, "How did you make all this amazing food? What is all of this? Teach me. Like, this is incredible." And Quan's like, the reason you were able to see that was because, unlike other people of our race, you actually go out and think of things other than food, and you've made friends, and like you've experienced the world.
Does she though?
Well, that's kind of this is her story moment, his/her story moment. Quan's like, if you go out and make friends and see the world and experience life, you can taste food that you haven't eaten yet. You can imagine food and tastes and complexities that just going out and eating cannot teach you, and it makes you a better gourmet than if you just go out and eat. And then Vivi kind of... Oh, what?
Is that the name of their race?
Yeah, they're gourmets. Yep.
Okay.
What?
A little on the nose, but whatever.
Yep, that's what they are. Or, no, they're Qs. They're Qs, but they... QU is their race's name. But they are gourmets by profession.
By training. Yeah.
And then Vivi shows up.
Yeah.
And Vivi sees his grandpa and is like, "Grandpa, I never thought I'd see you again." And Quan's like, "Yeah, I'm dead, but because you guys remember me, I was able to come back for this brief moment." And then he kind of fades away. And Quina confronts his/her mentor, Quail, and just says, like, "Quail, you're small-minded. I need to find some other stuff." Or, like, Quan was right.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I enjoy bringing Vivi's story back into this and kind of seeing the origin of him. And the fact that Quina, being such a throwaway comic relief character for most of this game, that they included like a secret scene where they do Quina's character development, I think on the one hand, that should be mandatory. Like, that sequence is pretty good. and two, it's kind of cool that this character who otherwise is kind of bleh gets to have this development at all, because Quina didn't have to have it.
I also was so the first time I saw the scene, I was very much like, well, this is kind of weird because it's trying to go for an emotional tone and then it's also trying to be humorous. But I feel like it's actually a really good foreshadowing for when you enter the land of the memories, Memoria.
Yes, it is.
And the idea that memories last forever and can create illusions in which are able to interact with the greater world and teach them lessons throughout life. I think that it's actually really good foreshadowing. But that further highlights kind of the point you brought up. This should be required.
Yeah. Just like Amarant kind of showing his
Come on.
flashback with Zidane, that shouldn't be like a opt-out. Like, two of your main cast members can have completely missable story chunks of their backstory.
It's also the only form of foreshadowing or front-loading that the game does to the idea that memories can last forever and have a omnipotent presence in Gaia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't even put together that it's kind of a foreshadowing, but yeah, totally. But yeah, that's a cool little sequence. It's almost an Easter egg, but it's the kind of the culmination of Quina's story. Other than the actual ending of the game. But that's kind of the moment where Quina grows as a character. After that, you've got the Stelazio. Did you do all the Stelazio?
Yeah, what exactly was added to the game? I mean, we could bring it later, but I was very unclear as to what the Stelazios actually added, because I got all 13, and I don't know what cutscene or thing that it... We'll talk about... What?
Yeah, so what it does is it gives you the Cinna's hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cinna, your buddy from Tantalus, you get his hammer, and you can use that a couple different ways. You can just leave it in your inventory, which unlocks an additional scene in the play at the end of the game. When I Want to Be Your Canary happens, you get an additional sequence in that cutscene.
Well, what's the additional sequence?
I think it's the one with Rose. Okay, fair enough. But you get that. You can also, if you beat Hades, which ZP you had trouble with.
I fought that guy.
Guy's a motherfucker.
That guy is a motherfucker.
Did you beat him?
No, I don't think I did.
Yeah.
So if you beat Hades, you can use the hammer to make a couple of unique items that you can't make any other way. You can make tin armor, which is the best armor in the game for Freya or Steiner. You also can make, I think it's, if you make pumice, which is a stone that lets Garnet summon her ultimate summon, you can break it back into pumice pieces. Yeah. So, Pete, did you go to Madain Sari?
Dude, there are too many names.
The summoner.
I lost track.
Town.
This is a problem in the game. There's some real bad names, and it's really hard to memorize what is what.
I don't think I went during Disc 4, no.
Okay,
so there's a
missed
good
out
side
again.
quest to go to next. ZP, the summoner side quest.
I liked the story part of it, but I think it's mechanically broken.
Yeah, it's mechanically not that interesting. So if you go back to the summoner village, Lonnie, the mercenary who takes Eco, and you fight her in Fossil Rue.
The whole setup for it is so bad. So you have to bring a party with either Amarant or...
Without Amarant or...
No, you have to scare her away for once, and then you go out, and then bring a party without Garnet or Amarant, and then you get to talk to her. And then when you talk to her, she tells you to go to the wall. And then when you go to the wall, you talk to the wall, and then... You're just stuck there trying to figure out what you need to do?
No, she tells you to talk to the box where Eco's grandpa's stone was. And in there it says, the wall is a clock. You need to go 9. I think it's like 9 chimes or something.
I sped through that and I didn't read that.
Okay, you should read that. It tells you exactly what to do. Well, Lonnie, so that bounty hunter who was working with Amarant early on in the game, she gets nursed back to health by the Moogles at the Summoner Village and just lives there now in Disc 4, which lets you you talk to her, she'll tell you, like, I really regret what the hell I did to you. You should check out this thing. And so you can go to the Eidolon Wall, and in the wall, earlier on in the game, it kind of gives you this shot where you see, like, this fire in the middle, and then you can kind of see the wall. When you come back in Disc 4, it lets you actually kind of walk the perimeter and see all of the murals that are painted on the sides. And a couple of the murals will have just these story bits that you can read on them that kind of tells the history of the Summoner Village. And when you complete this kind of, you have to walk from side to side, I think 9 times. And when that happens, all of the history of the village kind of gets unfurled. There's one piece of dialogue per mural on the wall. And it'll tell, like, the Summoner Village's history. You know, we settled here X years ago. We came to discover these beings called Eidolons, and we can summon them. Eidolons are... They're kind of, it's unclear whether they are whether legends create Eidolons or Eidolons create legends, but some of the Eidolons kind of have changed form over time as the legends have changed. Like, we have some summons that when we first summoned them, they came as like a little girl, but now when we summon them, they come as a grown woman, and we don't know whether it's because of the legend of this character changing or what, but there's kind of this idea of a mythology giving rise to this powerful being, and that it is not necessarily intrinsic to Gaia. They also foreshadow Ark, that summon. I don't know if you remember Ark, but you fought Ark in Olivert. It's the final boss of Olivert.
Oh. Huh.
So
that's a nice touch.
Yeah, that summon is actually, it's foreshadowed in the village that summon kind of was brought about by the people of Terra, kind of having their own mythology. And so when you summon Ark, it shows up. Neither of you got the summon, but it shows up as the boss you fought, and then it transforms into like this robot with a death cannon on its shoulder. It blows everything up.
Yeah, I watched it. It's forever long. It's badass the first time you see it, but it's forever long.
Mm-hmm. Like so many summons.
Yeah, there's always one summon that's stupid long. In 7, it was Knights of the Round. In 8, it was Eden.
Oh, Eden.
Oh, Eden is stupid.
Yeah, it is.
Eden is 1 minute and 30 seconds, and you can't ever... No, man. Yeah,
Why would you do that?
It's ridiculous. It's,
Yo, dog, in FF8, there's a mechanic called Boost, where you can mash a button during the cutscenes to make the summon
to make it stronger.
And you can do that for a minute straight.
It's the only one that I think I was able to get the maximum number of button presses.
Yeah. that one in Bahamut, you can get it. But it's like...
It's a minute.
It's hilarious. You like mash, and then it's like, don't mash for this segment, and if you mash, you get reset to 0. It's a bad mechanic for a bad system. But the cool thing about the wall, other than kind of getting the larger lore of the summoners and their village, is you find out Garnet's actual name, her birth name at least, before she got adopted. You find out that her father passed away, like died in the village after the storm that knocked her and her mother to Alexandria, and her name was Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good name.
Nice name. Interesting information. I wish the game did something with it. I wish that if you had Garnet in your party, there was something that actually there was teeth to that moment. To actually,
her name became Sarah from then on.
Yeah. There was actual emotional resonance. Something that actually resonated with the player within the game in terms of that revelation. So is that it meant something.
Yeah, as it stands, it's just kind of this nice piece of lore, which I appreciate, but it's not world changing. The thing that I actually like the Eidolon kind of explanation that there's power in mythos.
Yep.
And I think that is one of the large theses of Final Fantasy IX. And with that in mind, I guess you got the Excalibur ZP. You finally went to Deguero.
Yeah, I went to Deguero. I got my S rank on with the treasure hunter. That's a reference.
Yeah, he's from Final Fantasy V, and
he also has an epic.
Yeah, he's got an epic. Echidneus, his buddy.
Enkidu.
He does some weird things to animals and ladies, and builds a wall. Anyways, Deguero, first off, if you're building a library, how about you not build it in a lake? Like, water is not a good thing to preserve the cultural written knowledge of an entire country or world. Don't put it in a fucking lake or waterfall. Or why is the library covered in water?
They use hydropower for everything, which I think that is a... Final Fantasy IX might have some of the strongest art design I've seen in a while. Just kind of location designs with a library covered, in ankle-deep water.
I'm still looking for something that is like a fully realized version of Final Fantasy VII. Midgar. Something like that. But I don't know, man. I wish that what you did in Deguero was funner than what it was. Because you can read a bunch of books on the ground and kind of learn a little bit more about the world and the lore of the world, but was that the best way to present that information?
You do find
I don't
one of the
think so.
characters from Slyra kind of...
Yeah, that's a great moment. And that's actually not the first time we found a person from Slyra or Burmecia.
That's the first person from Slyra. You find a person from Burmecia and Limblum, and then you find someone from Slyra in Deguero. Which I love that that place gets fucking annihilated, and they don't leave the characters behind.
Yeah.
They show that even after that sort of catastrophe, there are people trying to rebuild, even though you don't go back to those locations. You also have people kind of discussing larger philosophical questions, which is kind of cool in Deguero.
It's maybe one conversation between a store clerk and some dude.
Yep.
And you get to pick a side.
Yep. But it's thoughts that the rest of the world don't necessarily have. It's conversations that the rest of the world doesn't necessarily.
It just kind of reminded me of Esto Gaza, where it had an interesting world and premise, and I wish that the game had fully realized it in a more comprehensive manner or substantive manner. Because all this knowledge of the world, and I can't read a single one of those books, or I can't read a single one of those. I can't learn anything.
And that's fair. So
and then
after that,
I actually was trying to get all the beaches for Fat Chocobo, but you seem to think that's
not worth your time.
You didn't know about that. How did you not know that there's a mission to locate all of the beaches in the world?
Because I probably heard that once and then went, fuck that. Who would do that?
I did. And it wasn't worth it at all.
Yeah,
there's 21. But anyways, Excalibur, another interesting thing that is sabotaged by the game's mechanics with soul-crushing chance and probability.
That's the auction house, right?
Yeah. So some old dude says, man, I really want to find this magical fingertip before I die. And first off, I say to the old guy, first off, I'll chop my pinky finger off if it means I can get this cool-ass sword. Second off, that's a weird thing to ask. Just some random bozo. It's like, I want the magical fingertip. Not just any fingertip. I want a magical fingertip. So is he like actually asking for a guy's finger? Is that really?
I think this is probably a callback to an earlier FF game. I don't remember that
Okay,
item.
well,
but
whatever.
A lot of the things in the auction house are callbacks.
So what you
like
need to
Rat's Tail.
do, the big problem is that it does result in the most powerful weapon for Steiner, or one of. The problem is mechanically trying to get that item is a giant pain.
Yeah, I've never done it.
Are you goddamn kidding me?
No. Why would I? No. No,
Why
I'm not
did you
kidding.
ask me to do it?
I didn't ask you to do it. I ddidn't tell you to do the Excalibur thing.
I recall you saying, yeah, man, you can totally get Freya's most powerful weapon. You can get all these characters' most powerful. And I explicitly remember you saying, get it. You could totally get Excalibur.
I said could, not you should. I said you should get the other ones. You can, if you feel like it. I'm not going to stifle you. You're a beautiful flower. You gotta grow sometimes. You gotta grow towards the light.
No, this is not happening. This is... Okay,
I didn't ask you to do this.
Oh, man. So you have to go to the auction house.
And randomly it'll come up sometimes, the magic finger.
Yeah, no. You have to buy the 4 referential items from previous Final Fantasy games first, which is
Une's Mirror.
Daga's Artifact, Une's Mirror, Rat's Tail, and then I forget what the last one is. Oh, Griffin's Heart. And you have to buy them from the auction house. And Lord have mercy on your soul that the price doesn't go ridiculously high to where it's like half of your income or half of your wealth. Because sometimes, like I said, you pray to the random die roll lady, the giant goddess of die rolls. And sometimes she's really nice to you. And sometimes she says, ha 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 ha, all 6s. And you have to buy those items. Then you have to find out the person who wants those items in Treno, locate them, sell it to them, and then now you have a chance to buy the magical fingertip. Also worth noting, the auction house doesn't have all of these items on sale all at once. Because, fuck you, that's why.
You have to wait until it's sometimes for sale.
Sometimes it'll say, we're going to sell the rat tail today. And then there are 4 items, and so you have to go through the entire animation for the auction house. And usually it's sold at the end. Sometimes it's sold at the beginning. You have to go through the entire animation for the auction just to get to your item and hope that the price isn't ridiculously high. Buy it, leave the auction house, re-enter the auction house, see what the new items are, go through the entire animation again. Because if you try and trick the game and leave and exit, enter and exit, it's going to reset the one that you exited out of until you see it to its conclusion. So, oh, hey, Une's Mirror's on sale. I'm going to buy that for 60,000 gil. I only have 15K left. Now I got to go back, get some money, do the robe synthesis trick. And then you come back, and then it's going to sell, hey, this time we're not going to sell any of those artifacts you need for this side quest. We're just going to sell a bunch of bullshit. And you got to go through the animation. Okay, reset, outside, come back inside.
There is a cool thing you can do with those artifacts. You can actually take a couple of them to the Black Mage Village, and in the hotel there's a gramophone, and if you have, I think, Une's Mirror, it will play a song from one of the earlier games on the gramophone, which is kind of cool.
I'm a man on a mission, Gino.
That's fair. So you got the magical fingertip, you got Excalibur. I think this is a good time.
And
Billy,
proceeded
I believe,
to completely misuse Excalibur.
Oh wait, Billy's not available. Billy was here for a sec. He was available. Now he's not again.
So I put all this time and effort on this fucking sword, and I thought that Clim Hazard was the most powerful attack for fucking Steiner. I was wrong.
No, Shock is. But you had the weapon to get Shock, at least.
Why is it the fucking sword that I had to jump through hoops through the most powerful thing in the world?
Well, Excalibur 2 is.
I get that Excalibur 2 is, but I did a lot for this item. I did a lot, Gino.
You did.
And even the spell that I get out of that sword isn't that great.
I mean, it's great. It's the second strongest one of his moves. It will clear a crowd And if he was higher level, it would do straight 9s to everything.
Fuck. Yeah, if I had properly leveled him, if I had properly leveled him or was using his items correctly and didn't sell one of his best armor sets on accident.
Yeah, that would probably help.
Yeah.
So after all that, I think the last side quest thing...
Mognet.
It's not even a side... Well, did you do Mognet?
I did do Mognet. Please tell me you did Mognet. What?
I have done Mognet before. I have done Mognet before.
You put Mognet on the list of side quests I needed to do.
Yeah, it's real dumb. I thought you'd enjoy. That one was
Are
just
you
for me.
goddamn kidding me? You didn't do... Pete, did you do Mognet?
No, fuck Mognet.
God damn you people. Son of a bitch.
I've done it. I know Mognet. Mognet, the most fucked up thing about Mognet is at a certain point there's one Moogle who is in I think it was in Fossil Rue, and so that place doesn't exist anymore on Disc 4.
Go and find this guy. You have to basically go to Quan's dwelling, retrace your steps, find it, and you have to find that guy.
He's in Fossil Rue.
You
have to take Quina. You take Quina to Accuse Marsh, to the one in by Limblum, and then Quina sniffs out Fossil Rue's entrance a second time, and a Moogle climbs out, and he's like, "I got a letter."
I got a letter. Here, take this.
Oh my god! I spent hours trying to find that Moogle, not realizing I needed Quina in my party. It's like, well, I'm here at Accuse Marsh. Can I find the fucking where is it? What? Why is this happening to me? Why?
Okay, I'm gonna add Billy to this call for a second, then we can finish up Mognet and finish up the game.
And then the game is all like, "Hey, you need Super Slick. I'm not gonna tell you where you need to find that." It's like, oh shit. So now I have to go through all of Alexandria, asking who has Super Slick, and I'm just aimlessly hitting the interact button until I finally found Ruby, and she's like, "Hey, I'm a Southern Belle. I put oil in my hair all the day. Here's some of my shit."
Yep.
Oh,
Super
God.
Slick, it turns out, is like hair gel. And turns out that there's a Moogle who's got dope hair. And that's...
And what do you get?
He ground the Moogle postal service to a halt for his dope hair.
Hey, man.
And
Look good, feel good.
You get a Maiden's Ring, which is...
No, you get a Protect Ring.
Which also sucks.
So I put all this bullshit into this goddamn system. And you know what's the worst part, Pete? Do you know what's the worst part? All of the letters that you gave those fucking Moogles didn't fucking mean a goddamn thing.
Of course not.
All you needed to do was the last 4 or 5 of them. So you were just doing all of those letters prior to those 4 for no fucking reason whatsoever.
There is a reason. They give you Koopo nuts, and you can give the Koopo nuts to the dude in Gizmoog's Grotto, and he will give you random rewards for giving him Koopo nuts, because he's Koopo for Koopo nuts.
I did that for a little bit until I realized, man, it's kind of a pain in the ass to go from the entrance of Burmecia all the way back to where that Moogle is. It's actually kind of a pain in the ass.
There is a shortcut. There's a shortcut.
Are you goddamn kidding me?
No. So when you're in there, there's a vine that if you climb on it the first time, he'll be like, there's really strong monsters up there. Don't go up there. There are the strongest random encounter enemy in Gaia, Grand Dragons. You can run into them on Disc 1, and they'll just fucking kill you. But on Disc 4, if you want a shortcut to get in there, there's a forest on kind of a plateau. You can just go in, and then you go straight to where the Moogle is in Gizmoog's Grotto.
Fuck.
Sorry, man. There are shortcuts.
Okay, I have one question I want to ask you, Gino, before we move on to story stuff.
I just wanted to talk about Dolly before.
Okay, fine.
Stuff, but
great. Go.
Yeah.
You go.
Okay, so Dolly, one thing that I wanted you to do was either get the coffee or not for Mr. Morid. So that's a side quest that kind of... yes, Billy, it is safe to talk. Billy, if you want to talk, you can talk.
Billy.
No.
He's a professional.
Billy, are you there?
Right
Professional.
Billy.
Hello? You
Yes.
Billy.
Yes.
Are we actually recording right now, or is
Yes,
it
Yes, we are.
Oh,
Welcome to
What?
the podcast, Billy.
They can hear you
mid-podcast?
Normally, I interrupt your guys' podcasts.
Oh shit!
Welcome to the podcast, Billy.
Usually
Hot
you tell
swap.
me to be welcome to the fucked upagon. This is kind
Welcome
of
to
the same
Fucked
thing.
Upagon. Welcome
Doctor-
to Danger Town.
Dr. Octagon.
Welcome to the jungle.
Are
We
you
got
playing
fun
El Fuerte
games.
right now?
So we're going to almost. We are. We're just finishing up the side quest stuff. Then we're going to talk about story stuff. So you did not miss anything that you did.
What if
So-
the recording doesn't catch me coming in?
It looks like it's still going. So
Okay.
I mean, I can.
No. I trust you, Gino.
That's,
You know, this wouldn't be the worst thing
famous
to
last
happen
words.
technically to a Final Fantasy podcast for your website.
that's
There was
true.
that 4-hour-long Final Fantasy VIII podcast that died halfway through.
That was a real bummer.
We didn't
Um,
lose anything.
We didn't, but it was a bummer.
You guys decided
so,
to re-record half of it.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did. That
We
was a
made it
dumb
work.
thing. That was a
We
dumb
made it
thing.
work.
That was a dumb thing.
So, Dolly.
Yeah.
You can get coffee for Mr. Morid. He's this old man who hangs out in the observation tower right by Dolly. And if you get him his coffee, he will give you like a key item. I think it's a replica of the theater ship, the Prima Vista.
It is.
It's not a great, that's not a great reward. But the reward for me, Dolly is the one location in FF9 that changes throughout the entire game. Going into Disc 4, I actually double-checked by going back through all of the different locations to make sure that there wasn't new dialogue in Disc 4. And Dolly, it starts out in this kind of industrial boom where they've joined in with the military-industrial complex. They said, farming is too difficult. We are going to become an industrial town selling weapons, and that is going to make us a ton of money for a lot less work. And then by midway through the game, they are booming, and you can't find an adult anywhere because they're just rolling in the money. Then towards the end of Disc 3, or towards Disc 3, everyone's super depressed because the war is over and the Queen's been defeated, and now what the fuck are we gonna do? And then on Disc 4, they've kind of accepted that their shortcut, their kind of military-industrial shortcut, is not correct. And they kind of go back to farming. And I gotta say, I feel like in our current climate, our current political climate, a small town in the rural outskirts of this large metropolis of Alexandria that is propped up by industry, but the industry goes away, and they are really worried about going back to this rural agrarian style of life. Maybe it's a little Final Fantasy IX coming back to relevance. Who's to say?
You could even get more specific. Like, think about how many tanks we still make, even though tanks aren't really effective in modern warfare.
Exactly. And it's weird to have that in this small town, in this kind of, like the first town you go to in this game, that it is a long parable about the military-industrial complex. But that's in this game. And in Disc 4, outside of just Dolly kind of evolving again, you have Mr. Morid, his location gets destroyed by one of the roots. Like, a bunch of the side dungeons get destroyed in Disc 4, and you can't go back. And there's kind of a story explanation for Mr. Morid not being available. They say that there's an earthquake that happened when the roots kind of erupted from the Ifa tree, and he dies. He's killed by the earthquake. And depending on whether you got him his coffee or not, he either dies happy or not.
What?
Which is, yeah.
What?
Yeah. That's the difference. That is one of the things that happens, is the conversation you have with one of the characters in Dolly about Mr. Morid changes depending on whether you completed a side quest. If you did not complete it, she doesn't make mention of, she just says that he died, and it's kind of a sad thing. If you get him his coffee, he dies, but there's kind of an anecdote that he was super jazzed about the coffee, and was happy. He seemed content, which is a cool thing to throw into this otherwise forgettable side quest. That's one of the payoffs outside of this key item.
I'm going back in.
You're giving that old man
I'm gonna
his
give
dying
that
wish?
man his dying wish. I'm going back in. I'm gonna replay it. I'm gonna level up all the characters so I can beat Hades and Ozma. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna double bag it, son. I'm gonna jump in, and it's gonna be great.
So
Why do you want to hurt yourself? Why would you willingly do harm to yourself?
See, we've talked about this before on this podcast. I want to be the first person to die as a result of playing a Final Fantasy game. I just want my heart to just, while I'm playing one of these games, to go like, fuck, and then I'm dead. And then
you
I'm
want
dead.
a Surgeon General warning on the
on
side
these
of
goddamn video games starting after my death.
Just a shot of ZombiePie's face, like on every box. Like, this could happen to you.
This could happen to
no.
you.
Have you seen the episode of King of the Hill where Hank finds Bobby smoking, and
Yep.
his answer is to have him smoke a carton of cigarettes
Yeah.
so that he will never smoke again?
Yeah.
King of the Hill is an underrated show.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, but
I think
I
it's
feel like
garbage.
we should do that for
Me.
Zombie Pie at some point.
So-
You're gonna sit here and play this Final Fantasy
Haven't
until
we
you don't
already
play it anymore.
been doing that?
No, but I mean like in one sitting.
Oh,
A carton of Final Fantasy.
Whole carton of Final Fantasy in one setting.
yeah. It's not like you've tried to have me do that before. You've tried
Never.
to kill me slowly.
So we are finally on the story.
One
You're
one
back
quick
on the main
question.
track,
Wait,
I think.
my quick question.
Yes.
What is this? I remember seeing this in the news, either in Kotaku, Gamatsu, or other websites. What was the whole reported thing to where, like, only 2, maybe 3 years ago, they finally discovered a side
additional
quest in the
quest.
game? Like,
Yeah, so there's in Lindblom at the hideout for Tantalus. There are those brothers with their kind of pincer hands, the Jiro brothers.
kind
or
of like the
something.
weird bulls or things like that.
Weird. I
I
don't
Are
forget
you
what
saying
they
they're
are.
lobster men?
They're kind of lobster men. You fight them in like the first battle on the Prima Vista when you're fighting Baku kind of in his big king outfit, and he has 2 goons. They are the goons.
Okay.
And throughout the game, you can kind of go to Lindblom and you can gamble with them. I think in either Lindblom or Alexandria. One of those places you can gamble and they'll, pay you money. But in Disc 4, they will be in Lindblom, and as you beat the bosses in Memoria, if you go back to Lindblom, you can talk to them, and they will, have a slowly advancing story, and then at the end they'll give you, a cool item or something, which is something no one discovered until 2 years ago in this 15-year-old game. 2 or 3 years ago. Because why would you ever leave Memoria to go check this random location in Lindblom, right? That's not a play pattern that anyone would ever do. But it exists. Here's the thing that exists. I also went back to Alexandria in Disc 4 and realized that there's a ton of cool stories in Alexandria, similar to Lindblom in terms of reconstruction and kind of the aftermath of devastation. One of the grandmas in Disc 1, Vivi can talk to, and she's like, I'm making clothes for my granddaughter. And then when you come back in Disc 4, her house is destroyed. And her husband are kind of standing outside with her granddaughter. I was this close to making you new clothes. I'm so sorry. And then the granddaughter's like, it's okay if I don't have new clothes as long as everyone's alive. And it's just some grim but hopeful stuff, which is a lot of this game. So there's that quest, ZP.
Okay.
It's not a huge deal.
Inane
It's just cool that it
bullshit
exists.
for the sake of it.
It exists.
It's there because,
So-
yeah.
The story. It starts with an epic confrontation at this gigantic
yeah, you're right.
pulsating orb.
That introductory cutscene for Disc 4 is so fucking good. Oh my god. I'm stuck between two worlds because I was about to say something that I think you're going to disagree with. It's almost as good as the parachute scene in Final Fantasy VII.
I'm fine with agreeing with that. I will
It's
side with 9.
no, I think I want to side with 7.
I just love. There's kind of a Billy and Pete. Did that scene resonate with you guys?
The introductory scene at the beginning of 4.
Yeah,
of
with all the
Memorial
dragons
when you're-
coming at you and
Yeah,
like
that was
everyone
actually
comes to your
super badass.
rescue. That shit was great. Man,
Like,
that
I-
was
There's a couple of-
badass.
I
think
wanted
it had,
to dislike it, and I just couldn't.
I think it has cinematic weight, but again, I feel like since so much of my gameplay has been chopped up and segmented, that I looked at some stuff and I was like, gee, that's pretty. I wish I knew what the fuck was actually going on.
What's there to know, man? There be
Yeah,
dragons.
but then the
I
characters
mean, like,
are
I
on
know
the
the squad's
ships.
rolling in, like, but
It's just like oh my god, that's Beatrix's music.
again,
Yeah, I feel like The
since
game
I've been playing
does
the
do a
game
good
on
job
mute,
setting it up by having those characters pop immediately after their ships pop through. So I understand not being able to identify the difference between the Hildegard, the Red Rose, or that. But then the game immediately transitions to a cut or a smash cut to Beatrice or Sid. And those are characters you've been interacting with for hours.
you're right. Like, I know that, like, the squad's rolling in, but like I said, Gino mentioned, like, hey, but like it's the music playing, and I said,
Oh no,
that was a
that was a
wrestling
metaphor.
joke, Billy.
That was a joke.
That was
oh,
a wrestling joke.
oh, well then that makes more sense because, like I said, I played the game on mute, so like
You shouldn't play this game on mute. It's got good music.
I had
You should also
done,
watch more
I had
professional
played it
wrestling.
on mute for so long, so I didn't want to just like turn it on
Oh,
like 70%
God.
through.
The final boss music's so good. Okay,
Also, I
but,
could like listen to something else, like edit the podcast while I'm
that's
playing.
fair. But I just love the Hildegard showing up, blowing dragons out the sky, and then the
I
Red
love the
Rose.
dialogue, like when Beatrice is all like, "Don't worry about Steiner. He's going into Valhalla." Says with
Yes,
such a weight. It's like, yeah, we're going to Valhalla.
I was actually so ready to ship Beatrix and Steiner.
well, good because they fall in love.
Yeah,
There's that really good moment where Zidane all like, "Man, you fell in love with a crazy person," and Steiner just goes to him and is like, "What the
He's
fuck
like,
are you
"Yeah,
talking about?
He's like, what about you, bro?
Yeah,
You're one to talk."
you sure know how to pick them. What? Look at yourself. Yeah, that sequence is awesome, and then you fight the Nova Dragon.
That scene is weird.
Yeah, you're fighting in like space or something.
Space, this pink dragon.
Yep, you kill it. That dragon fight's hard, but
Okay, Gino. So I think that it's time to rag on me for a little bit.
yes.
I think it's time to make fun of me and my competency.
Yeah, so Pete and Billy, how did you find the final boss fights? Did you find them difficult, easy, like on par?
I was just
The four fiends, let's say.
the four fiends. Well, let me before we get to the four fiends. Well, all right, it's gonna come after. I'll complain about that other stuff later. The four
can
fiends,
I go first if it's okay?
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
so in an effort to finish the game, I started, like, I used the thing where I can just deal max damage all the time so that I could get through the story.
That's fine.
So I just max damage through the all the rest of the game so that I could actually just,
Completed in time.
yeah. And
Okay.
fine, like, I know that I missed some gameplay experience. I just want to announce that I'll be revisiting Final Fantasy IX to play it for realsies sometime after I've fully detoxed. But as far as the, like, essentially the boss rush, I found it to be a in comparison to other Final Fantasy boss rushes, I actually like this one a lot. But maybe it's because I'm not sure if it's because I had it set up on easy mode or not, but I liked the end sequences of the final boss rushes.
Ah, man.
I didn't think it was unduly challenging. I'll put it that way. I mean, they were tough, sure, but I wasn't destroyed by them. I was glad that they came back after that earlier bit where you got to see all these things and not have to fight them.
Yeah, so ZP frantically was like, help. And so I jumped in to assist. And I noticed some things that I thought were a bit peculiar, but I thought at first maybe there were reasons he was doing that.
Ah, man.
He was using Cure on his whole party. Like Cure, not Cura or Curaga, not the strong ones. He was using Cure. And he didn't have Curaga. Or
Why not?
he would.
I mean, there's a separate item you need to use Kiraga from, and I didn't.
He didn't equip it. And so there were just like spells that were missing and abilities like he would cast, like the enemy would have reflect on it and he would just keep casting spells into it as though the next one was going to break through.
I mean,
punch through the
that
barrier.
animation, that the twinkle on their face is really hard to see.
It says they cast reflect.
Yeah.
I mean, it says it once.
And there were times when I was like, oh, why don't you have Kiraga? I was like, oh, you equipped this other weapon. Maybe there's a reason you're using the tiger racket instead of the whale whisker. And he was like, oh, I just hit optimize every couple hours. I haven't looked at what any of these items do. I was like, well, maybe that's the problem. So the reason he was using Cure was because he didn't realize that you could use all targeting for any other spell. He thought that Cure was special, and Cura and Kiraga couldn't target everyone.
I didn't realize how you could cast all spells for all of the spells. I didn't. Look, man, give me that. That's a reasonable thing to not realize you can cast all spells because
no. I'm gonna defend
Mogster
here.
says it once. He says it once.
ZP and I just happen to play this game in many ways like exact opposite of one another. Because I focus exclusively on combat efficacy, like make sure I grinded up my team, and if I found out that like some monsters had like level X death, I'll make sure, hey, you know what, I gotta just grind up 2 more levels until I get my party outside of level X death range. All right, that's no problem. I love grinding. Oh, I just got a new weapon for somebody? Time to grind until they get all their abilities mastered. Like, I have almost every single Zidane ability, like, I think possible in the game on him.
Okay, and then that was quickly another problem is because I would always hit optimize every now and again, I was never fully mastering any abilities. So I think with Steiner and Vivi...
That's like the main part of the game.
Yeah, but
Can
I mean,
ask
come
a question of Gino? Or anybody who might know the answer. In this game, do the bosses scale with you like they do in 8?
No, they do not. They do not scale with you.
So if I had just grinded enough, I would have just blown out every boss.
You can outrun the bosses in this game if you are dedicated to it.
This
is deliberately a throwback. This is deliberately a throwback.
Also, let's not praise 8's leveling scale ability.
I'm not praising it. I'm just saying in contrast, you can essentially, I mean, if you wanted to, I guess, be like level 5 throughout, most of Final Fantasy VIII.
Yes, you can beat Final Fantasy VIII on like level 1 or very low level. 9 you can also beat at a very low level, but it takes very specific tactics. 8 you just kind of do the normal tactics, and they are just more effective the lower level you are. The game just gets more difficult the higher level you play at. So you also use Soul Blade on bosses that would just definitely be immune to them. Like you were trying to
I mean,
Hades to sleep, and that just never works.
There's no way for me to figure out if it missed. It just says miss.
No, it says immune.
Yeah, it should say immune.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It says guard or miss.
I was there. Guard. Guard means it's immune.
And then I'm personally, I think that the in-game indicators for the abnormal status effects is really bad. And it's really hard to tell, do I have zombie, virus, slow?
So when you go to the characters in their, like if you target them or see their, for healing or anything, there is an indicator next to their name that says what it is.
But it doesn't say the word. It uses the icon. Yeah, but, so I need to memorize what the icons are.
Yeah, but
I feel like they're descriptive enough when you can be, if you used wait time, if you're in that menu,
crossbones,
you can just look and see what it is.
And then some of them aren't cured using remedies, so I would just pop off a remedy hoping that I could cure all of my characters, and then it's like, nope, zombie, you have to use a different item.
Magic tag.
Yeah, and then also, like, the items, it's not very clear which items do what unless you hit the one button, and then you have little...
And it tells you.
But then...
Monster shows up, and he's like, yo,
why
dog.
does it say... it should just say anti-zombie.
I heard you like magic.
What?
I heard your buddy's a zombie now. I got you covered, man. Thanks,
You mean-
Mogster.
Why can't the items have just obvious effects like in
Yeah.
other great RPGs like
Like,
Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden?
Yes.
yeah. The
Alcohol
items there are
cures
fine.
everything.
I learned the logic and the language of Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam faster than I did here. Because there is an item that just straight up cures everything.
Some of them...
And
some
I
of
also beat the secret boss in Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam. Unlike 9. Therefore, it's a
Is it
better
Kobe?
game than it. Huh?
Is it Kobe?
No,
Jack?
it's actually... You guys didn't beat the secret boss in Charles Barkley
I
Shut
don't
Up and
think
Jam?
I did.
Okay, so there were... Yeah.
Is
It's...
it Jay Allard?
No, it's a reference to a basketball movie. It's the boss from Michael Jordan in Windy City.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Okay. But, yeah, the mechanical stuff, whatever. You learned it when I told you, so you got over that. Each of the bosses, this is something that you guys might not have the context for, but Memoria is kind of the moment. When I first played this game, I didn't necessarily get Memoria, like understand why it existed in the first place. And the more Final Fantasy games I played and then came back to 9, the more Memoria made sense to me, because this is when the game gets pretty meta. All of the bosses in Memoria are callbacks to Final Fantasy 1. The 4 Fiends are the kind of the boss rush before the final boss of Final Fantasy 1. You fight Marith, you fight Kraken, Tiamat, and Lich, and those are the same 4 bosses, and Garland is kind of your narrator. Garland is the first boss and the last boss of Final Fantasy 1, spoilers. But,
Great.
he is kind of the first one of these villains that the games have. So, this whole sequence is kind of a big callback. You fight your way past Marith, and as you go, you kind of start seeing these moments from earlier in the game, kind of marching backwards in time. So you see the destruction of Maiden Sari. You see the destruction of Alexandria. Well, I think it's first like Alexandria, and you see a cutscene of Alexandria getting destroyed. You go back further, and you see the storm that destroyed Garnet's village and the giant eye in the sky. Then you start going back further and further, and you, at a certain point, just kind of get these primordial... Like, you get a primordial sea that is before there were even continents, and Quina kind of remembers swimming in the water, and you get a memory of fish. And each of these sequences only appears to the person who directly witnessed them, right?
Yeah, at first.
At first. And as you get further and further back, the memories become more and more universal until you end up in space at a certain point.
Yeah.
Is it really space, or is it like the universe pool?
It's like the Big Bang. You just go all the way back.
Because you see the crystal of creation, or whatever the fuck it's called.
Is that Pandemonium or whatever it's called?
No, Pangea.
What?
Are you talking about Pangea?
No, not
The name of the crystal?
Pandemonium from Terra, or
Yeah, I'm forgetting these fucking proper nouns, man.
You walk around in space-time, you see the crystal of creation, and you find out that the world was created by a crystal. The universe was created by
the primordial place?
No, Terra's the other planet where Zidane and Kuja are from.
Again, I'm still confused. Is Terra a separate planet in an alternate dimension, or is it a planet in the same universe? Is it
unclear?
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to say, are we actually going to space, or like are we just swimming around in the juice of the world?
You basically are going backwards in time to the Big Bang, or the moment of creation.
Okay.
The origin of the universe in terms of Final Fantasy IX time.
So why are they able to see the moment of creation in Memoria?
And Garland kind of says memories are passed down from generation to generation, including, like, there's a generational memory that transcends individual memory. And
Man.
that is why everyone can see the moment of creation, because we all descended from that moment. Which is heavy shit.
Well, that I can really get behind because, I'm all about the immortality of the soul. And, so, like, this just kind of rings true for me.
Yeah, you're right. It was gibberish. That's a good point, Billy.
Billy, you might have enjoyed, there are ghosts in Memoria, and they play cards. You can play cards against Tetramaster
Yeah,
ghosts.
I think that it was really inappropriate to hide these secret specters to play cards one last time while all this heavy meta stuff is happening in the story.
I just don't. I just didn't interact with Tetramaster anymore because I just sort of figured it out. Like, I think it ended up being an easier game than I think they designed it to be. I
don't dispute its difficulty. I dispute my desire to play it or its efficacy in the game.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's worth it.
Pretty
worth
useless.
Mastering.
Pretty useless. I mean, it didn't take much to master. I just sort of figured out like a strat that would just kind of cheese my way into winning all the time, and it became less fun. I didn't really even get to play like high level because I just got bored with it so fast.
You're not missing much.
I didn't want to be a Tetramaster.
But you kind of want to be a triple triad master.
Yes. Forever. I would play triple triad if there were physical triple triad cards. I would be playing triple triad right now.
Yeah, right. Fuck yeah, man. Because it's a good game. I just wish the quest line for triple triad was not bullshit. But yeah, you're right. Triple triad, man. Don't spread the random rule.
Yes.
Oh God.
So you go back through Memoria and you get to this gigantic crystal. The random encounters, if you had them on,
are pretty soul crushing.
In the crystal world. In the crystal world, it is just crystal versions of each of the four fiends. You just fight crystal versions of them with the same powers, though lower HP, and
Don't
the
you
same
fight
weaknesses.
a bunch of dragons too?
Yeah, there was also those weird dragons that can really mess you up if you're not careful.
They're like silver dragons or whatever.
Am I sure that those aren't just crystal versions of Tiamat?
There were purple dragons or pink dragons in one of these locations. I seem to recall this.
There are purple dragons. There's behemoths in some of these locations, but I just mean like in the crystal world itself. Like in that location when you pass through space.
Okay. Yeah, I think the dragons are before that, ZP.
Yeah.
Okay.
You fight behemoths kind of near the waterfall, and there are chimeras and things. There's all sorts of high-level Final Fantasy enemies that you fight there. And when you get to the crystal world, at the end of this whole long crystal corridor sort of thing, you run into Kuja and a couple of bosses. So first you fight Death Guys.
He's a real fucker.
A giant bat monster who's fucked up. He uses Meteor. The first thing he does, he's like, "Hello, friends."
I'm pleased to meet you. Meteor.
Meteor on your head. Fuck Death Guys.
I beat him on my first try, Gio. That was pretty amazing. I was not that lucky ever again.
Fuck Death Guys.
So is there... I noticed that there's kind of a weird animation. He's either all opened up or he's kind of closed up. Is there actually a mechanical difference or an in-game difference between...
There is.
Oh, really?
Physical versus magic?
Yes, when he's open, he does
of course it's
attacks.
magic versus physical.
When he's closed, he does his magic attacks. But the attacks are like, when he's open, he'll do claw or like a sweep move that hits everyone. When he's closed, he does like death. He just casts death on your party.
Yeah, that was a real fucker for me because I actually had a character, Zidane, who was of a multiple of 5. So he kept casting level 5 death whenever Zidane was alive, and that was not fun.
You just gotta make sure that your whole squad is prime number.
Is on that real shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to end the story, guys. I was very committed at this point to end the story.
Yes. And Death Guys, when I'm speedrunning, is a real motherfucker because his first form, when he's open up, he hits you with fucking Meteor, and then he might just hit you with an all attack like 3 times in a row, and you're underleveled, so you just die. But if you manage to survive to when he's closed, then you have a chance, because generally my party was not level 5. and then death only kills one character, and I can survive one character going down.
You just got to make
that
sure
fight sucks.
all your characters are level 37, so that there's the prime numbers, so they're immune to the death effects.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
a fair point. So you beat death guys, then they give you a chance to save, which very good of them.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Kuja's just watching. Is like, hey, I'm over here, but go ahead. I'm gonna be a gentleman. Let you save. Use a tent, pop one off, and get ready for it to get
freaky
up in here.
We'll just
With
say
my-
that throughout the game, Kuja has shown some class.
I don't know if I agree with that. He's walking around with a neon red merkin. That's not classy. That's inappropriate.
I said for most of the game.
It's like, you take a second, guy. Enjoy your last moments. So you fight him, and
His music is great.
his music is great. There's a moment, there's kind of a sense of resignation when you fight him. He's like, well, I guess we got to do this. Guess it's time to die, everyone. It's not like all of the bosses we've seen up until now are real cocky. Like when they beat you, they're gonna dominate the world. He's just kind of resigned to his fate and sad.
I think this actually is one of my problems with Kuja, because Kuja was very cocky for 90% of his characterization. Just had this, as you would put it, Gino, shitty affectations of Shakespearean prose.
Yes.
And he stops doing that for 10% of the story and characterization that he has in the game. And I think that's a little too sudden. I think that, yes, you're right. The premise or the reason for that pivot is he learns of his mortality, a very powerful tool for him, and then something to really motivate you. But there weren't enough moments of watching Kuja toiling away at that mortality. Basically, we go from Kuja is this weird guy, very flamboyant guy, to Kuja learns of his death, fight Kuja, redemptive arc.
Yeah, in the immortal words of the philosopher Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan until they get hit.
Punched in the face.
Till they get hit. And I think Kuja is one of those, it's kind of that kind of story, where he had a plan, he was doing his thing, and then it's just, he gets bad news, and he just can't deal with it. And so you fight Kuja. That music is awesome. The fight is pretty good.
You're forgetting the fact that it starts out sounding exactly like Queen's "We Will Rock You."
Yes, it does.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, that Dark Messenger. That song's great.
I think I kind of like the Millennium version of Dark Messenger more than this Trance Kuja version, where it has kind of the organ play. You know me. I mentioned this before. Give me all of the organs. My mother was actually an organ player at a pizzeria.
Great. I was going to say, give me all the organs is a great black market.
No. It's actually my mother was a professionally trained organ player at a pizzeria.
There's an Invader Zim episode where he just eats a bunch of organs to become more
Yeah,
human.
that's one of the... I can't watch that episode. I love that show. That's one of the episodes I literally cannot watch. It's too much.
Too gross.
Because I am actually clinically very squeamish. I can't even watch it if it's in video games, if it's intense gore. But anyways,
I
the
have three
battle...
hearts. How can I not be human?
The battle with Kuja is what I want battles at the end of video games to be, where it's cinematically powerful, very resonant, a kind of a set piece, a spectacle for the audience. And when you stop and think about it, it's really hard to actually lose.
I beg to differ.
I think that
that's with speedrun tactics. Like
okay,
when I
sure, I get that, but it's not, because the next battle, it's not the hardest thing that the game presents you in your way, and it's very visually pleasing to the eyes, and there's a sense of stakes to this battle, because either you stop Kuja from destroying the world, or you don't, and he destroys the world.
And it's not just the world; it's like all of existence.
All of existence, because behind you, again, it's the visual representation of the stakes are right there, because right behind Trance Kuja is the Crystal of Life.
And this is the moment where I think it's even more meta. So something that
why doesn't
is
Kuja
a context to this
Crystal
game.
instead of fighting us? Why doesn't he just? He's right there. Why doesn't he just cast
he does.
power against the crystal right there and just be done with it and still be alive?
I mean, he wants to kill you, but when you start beating him, he's like, "Well, fuck it. I'm gonna knock the table over. I'm not gonna lose this game. I can't lose if I knock the table over." So the meta thing is, this is the last game that Hironobu Sakaguchi, the main producer and kind of creative behind the first 9 Final Fantasy games,
Gooch.
made the Gooch. And this is kind of a return to form. And I feel like the idea of this crystal creating all of these worlds, or creating this world and making all this possible, I feel like is a callback to FF1 and all of these games, kind of crystal being a uniting theme that up until the end of 9, it's not present at all, really. But then you get this moment after you fought the bosses from FF1 and you heard the voice of the main character from FF1. You kind of get this return to the classical, the Warriors of Light defending this crystal or trying to find this crystal.
Personally, I find it to be a bit of a weakness on the part of the game because, sure, it's a reference to the previous entries, but to those previous entries, whether it be Final Fantasy 1 all the way up to 6, if there's a crystal, it's introduced very early in the game, and it's the MacGuffin of the game. Whereas here, the crystal is introduced in the last 20, 30 minutes. Here's the magical thing of life and creation. Protect it. And so personally, this is my personal assessment. I enjoy Final Fantasy IX when it's creating its own world and standing on the laurels of its characters, providing them moments to share. But every time the game tries to provide fan service to the audience or referencing materials or trying to connect it to previous entries of the Final Fantasy franchise, it ends up kind of falling flat. Because, one, I don't have that background information, so unfortunately for me, I've played 2 Final Fantasies prior to this, and there aren't any fucking crystals in those games. One of them doesn't even have magic. One of them, we're using rocks. Because,
chucking rocks at people.
There's no magic. It's just rocks. And everyone dies, and the world is dead. And then there's this nice girl, and then they kill the girl. And then there are rocks.
Yeah, and this moment, I agree that the strongest moments of FF9 are not this referential stuff, but I feel like this is the moment where they kind of acknowledge that were it not for those earlier games, the advancements that led to 9 would not have been possible. That this very bedrock story that they're referencing allowed for all of these other things to happen. And it feels to me now like a summation of his work in a larger way than just petty reference. It works for me now in a way that it didn't, just having the context of playing everything from 1 to 9. But I admit that it is a left-hand turn, and it is not necessarily without flaw. And so after you beat Kuja, he blows up the crystal, and we get to the portion where most people take umbrage with 9. They say the final boss, Necron, this giant blue dude,
comes out of nowhere.
Comes out of nowhere.
He's a nothing enemy.
Yeah.
And I would say that he's not a nothing enemy. He's a personification of the enemy that you kind of have the whole time, which is nihilism. He's a big personified version of nihilism, of Kuja's nihilistic.
But God, that's so cheap, Gino.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy personification of nihilism, personification of sin. Let's just personify these. It's the cheapest sort of additional super boss you could pull.
Sure, and it is very deliberate. Like he says, hope and despair. Like things are born to die. Finally, someone has realized that there's no point to any of this. I've come to end everything.
Gino,
and then you fight it and say, no, there's a reason to live, and we're going to beat the shit out of it. We're going to beat the shit out of nihilism and prove that there is meaning to all of this.
Are you trying to put in your own spices and flavoring on this? Because I feel as if I've interacted with other people who have finished 9 and they have a complete different interpretation as to what Necron is and what his purpose in the story is, and there are multiple people trying to break down what is the purpose of this boss in the story.
Sure. I mean, that's my interpretation. I think that when he says, like, life will come to, like, despair or something, like, he gives the fucking Star Wars line, like, anger leads to hate, hate leads to what is it? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate.
Hate leads to, like,
leads to suffering.
Death or, like, despair.
Suffering. God damn it.
Yeah, and so he's here to end it. Kuja, when he blows everything up, is like, well, I don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm just gonna time to end it. Like, if I have to go, everyone has to go. And I mean, it's not subtle. It's not fucking subtle. But I think that this game, for as melodramatic as that I interpret that moment to be, I feel like one of the main criticisms with melodrama is that it doesn't give appropriate weight or honesty to subtler emotions or smaller feelings. It just plays everything up to 11. And I feel like 9, up until this point, it is invested in the grime and in the unfortunate truths. It doesn't shrink away. You don't... Like, a melodrama that is unduly flamboyant, I feel like, wouldn't have a scene like the scene that ZP you described in the cemetery with Makoto and the Black Mage Village Elder. Like, there are so many moments where this game is very interested in looking at hard topics and trying to at least recreate them, if not necessarily comment on them.
But that's sort of, like, the weight of other scenes doesn't justify the shitty addition of this Uber boss. Like, you can have a game that overall is concerned with these sort of more subtle emotions that becomes a melodrama in this particular moment.
Yeah, and for me, it didn't ruin it. The melodrama of this moment, I felt a sense of catharsis in radically rejecting that mode of thought. That because it's going to come to an end, there's no meaning to any of this.
Right, but then your point is presupposing that sort of catharsis can't be achieved without the introduction of this Ultra Boss.
Oh, I don't think that you need to introduce this Ultra Boss. I think that there were other ways to end this game that probably would have also been satisfying. For me, my argument is a counter to this boss shows up for no reason and has no purpose and is bullshit. I am saying I acknowledge that this boss does not have a story, like, there's no scaffolding to who this boss is and what they represent. Or foreshadowing. This boss is a personification of this larger emotional undertone that is running through parts of the game. And here you get a chance to very overtly reject that line of thinking. And I feel like that is one of the largest theses of Final Fantasy IX as a work.
I think in many cases, if you're going to talk, Gino, about how this game throws back to earlier games in the series, I think this is maybe one of the deepest throwbacks, because in so many ways, earlier Final Fantasy games are the protagonist people fighting against somebody who's trying to annihilate things. And if this is really the last run of one of those main developers of the series, I'm thinking about games like 7, where Sephiroth just said, I want to just merge with the life energy and fly around in this planet of death and annihilate things, because that's what I want to do. And in even earlier games, people are saying, oh, we got to save the whole world from being just destroyed. This might be the ultimate throwback to other Final Fantasy games, because if the last one in this particular series of developers, the final boss, is defeating nihilism, then yeah, maybe this is like the ultimate conclusion. Take a step back. I think the game should have ended after Kuja.
Well, to add context, like where I'm saying that this is kind of a reproduction of Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 1 ends exactly this way. You fight Garland a second time. He comes back, spoilers. for Final Fantasy 1.
Spoiler, you're supposed to say spoiler before you spoiler.
Because we may actually play this game.
Yeah, so ZP, take your
Okay,
headphones off.
just give me a thumbs up when you're done.
Okay, so you fight that boss, and then after you defeat him, it's revealed that he is like host to this creature called Chaos. Very literally, Chaos. Not referenced pretty much anywhere else, but you fight this large demon creature that is a force of chaos who's trying to tear apart the world, and you're trying to bring order to it. It's this large... Oh, I thought you weren't listening.
I think he's just mumbling to himself.
I think he just mumbled into a microphone by himself.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's very overtly, I thought, a callback to, yet again, FF1.
Are we good?
But it was a mistake to begin with.
Okay, we're good. All right, so here's my reaction, and I'm the cynical son of a bitch that I sometimes am. I saw Necron pop up. It's like, oh, hey, game pulled a boss out of its ass for the end. That's happened before. This is a Final Fantasy game. I'm moving on with my life.
And that's fair. So, as a summation of one of this game's largest theses, it is not particularly subtle, but I don't begrudge the game for doing a callback that is similar to for recreating a moment that happens in other games in this series, but without any of the emotional scaffolding to build up this kind of moment at all. It's better than the other ones. That doesn't make it good.
Part of the problem too is it's in service of a bad turn with Kuja. If you want this bit of catharsis, use Kuja as he was intended, instead of sort of trying to vindicate him through the introduction of this new boss.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it lost an opportunity to better contextualize why Kuja is worthy of this redemption. We could have had a moment where Kuja fights us again, and we learn that we try to reason with him, or we try to set up the idea that he's either worthy of redemption. We try to provide him with redemption. So is that it's not all of a sudden, I see you're dying here. Let's just have this nice little conversation. So by having Necron, and I'm willing to accept what you're saying about Necron being an embodiment of nihilism, depression, and suicide or whatever. I actually apologize. I won't say whatever. That's disrespectful on my end. I'm willing to accept what you're saying, but the end result is that we deprive ourselves of a scene with characters that the game has spent time with, should develop more, and as a result, their moments later after Necron feel a little bit cheapened.
I agree. And this is just me. I don't think that this is the best implementation. I would say, here is my reading that makes sense of this.
Sure.
Not necessarily this is my reading for saying that this is not the reason why I love the end of FF9. It's not the Necron fight. The Necron fight for me is very forgettable. It's everything that happens after the Necron fight, and how the Necron fight kind of ties into it as it's a rejection of this line of thinking that the main antagonist has.
So do you...
And
Sorry.
the rest of the ending kind of follows on to that.
So speaking of the rest of the ending then, do you support the sort of deathbed turn they're making with Kuja?
I like that the moment... So you fight him. Kuja kind of rescues your characters. You end up outside the Ifa tree, and each of the characters kind of have their moments with Zidane, because Zidane says, I'm going to go back and rescue Kuja because I can't leave him behind, which kind of is the summation of his character, kind of, I do what's right because it's right, not because
How does Kuja save them? Because I was not entirely clear why...
Kuja,
did he control the tree?
It teleports them out.
Okay.
He teleports them out. When your characters teleport away at the end of the Necron fight, he's the one who teleports you away.
So is he... did they know that it was Kuja? Or did they just assume... Okay.
Zidane figures it out. And is like, he's the only person who could have done it. So each of the characters have their moments. Steiner has an awesome moment where he like turns his back and allows Garnet and Zidane to have their conversation. All the characters kind of say, I'm not going to let you... You can't die. You're doing this, but you can't this can't be the end of it. Except for Amaran, who's just kind of like, fuck this guy, he's going to do what he wants. Because he's hard as fuck. He doesn't care. Zidane has this awesome cutscene where he runs down the tree. The nice synergy of, like, full motion video and a rendered character model. Like, that's the best that they did on a PlayStation game, at least as far as I'm concerned. What, Billy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna echo that Omron's cool, and I wish I didn't have to wait 2.5 discs to get him.
He could have been a contender.
Yeah, I just didn't get an opportunity to say that earlier, but this seemed like an okay time to just throw it in there. Omron was a pretty cool character, and because I think the last time we did a podcast, I had only had maybe a couple hours to mess around with the character.
Mechanically, he's the most interesting character to play. Story-wise, he gets the short end of the stick.
I just feel like it's kind of cheap, you know?
He's kind of an asshole, and that's his thing. But you kind of go back and you find Kuja, and I gotta say, the more times I've seen that cutscene and seen the design of the interior of the Ifa tree, the more I wish that there was moments in the Ifa tree, just more often in that area where he ends up with Kuja. Because I don't know if you noticed, but when you get in there, there's like a bunch of stone soldiers kind of walking up the ceiling and like walking along the walls, and it looks almost like what is that Chinese tomb where there are just hundreds
with the
of
terracotta warriors?
Terracotta warriors.
Yes.
And
it looks almost like that.
Forgotten tomb.
And it's like surrounding Zidane, and like they're growing out of the walls, and it's this awesome environment that you just don't see. You see it for like a brief moments in that cutscene, but I wish that you could navigate that place. But you have the conversation with Kuja, and Zidane's like, "Why did you save it? Like, why did you do that?" And he says, I kind of wanted to make amends, and I just didn't have anything left. And this moment that he realizes after his nihilistic act that it didn't bring him any of the relief or happiness that he thought it might, I thought it was a nice redemption. Like, that he had the power to do something profoundly foolish and survive it and see that it was foolish. I enjoyed them giving him redemption because they don't give redemption to these enemies. Sephiroth doesn't have redemption. Ultimisia doesn't get redemption. They are barely fucking human. So to have a boss that makes these kind of large, sweeping, chaotic decisions and yet ultimately learn something from them is profoundly different. So what did you think, Pete?
It's like Deathbed Confessions are such a sort of tacky bit of
storytelling.
Yeah, like I get that people change and sort of evolve over time, but this seems like fan service and sort of its worst guise.
Yeah, I don't love the Deathbed Confession so much as I love Makoto's eulogy for Kuja after that scene.
I don't think Kuja's necessarily a character that deserves a eulogy.
Yeah, I would agree. We didn't see enough of him. We didn't see enough of the setup for what was worth saving in Kuja. Therefore, it doesn't seem legitimate to give him redemption in the first place. All we've seen him do is spread death and destruction, spend years of his life trying to spread chaos, the mist, sell weapons, create black mages, and treat those black mages as tools, not human beings or things with souls. And then all of a sudden, there's this 2-minute period where we see him on his deathbed, and all of a sudden we're supposed to accept the fact that he recognizes that what he did was wrong and accept that.
I think it cheapens a lot of what Kuja is.
And I guess that this kind of is similar to Queen Braun.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
And says, like, it was the greed, it was the grief, missing my husband, and kind of, I replaced that with greed. And I think that, it is kind of a cheap turn. When Makoto, so after Kuja passes away, Zidane may or may not be killed, who knows.
We know.
We know he survived. But there's a series of cutscenes where some stuff is happening, and then there are kind of these voices, these silhouettes with just voiceover. The first one is Makoto, then every other one is Vivi. But Makoto's statements are kind of, Kuja, you weren't a good person. Like, you sucked. You what you did was wrong. But you were the only person, the only genome who kind of defied our fate, and that is worth preserving. That even if you are making these terrible choices for this race that did not get to have a choice at all, the ability to make the wrong choice is a sign of freedom and independence that they did not have.
But then you don't need the redemptive arc.
No, you don't. I don't think you do.
No.
For what she says, and that's what resonates with me. His redemptive arc doesn't resonate with me quite as much. I just like the character, and so I liked being able to look back on him and see something more human.
I don't know,
even if it's unearned.
I feel like they were trying to improve on Cypher from Final Fantasy VIII, because in Cypher's case, he basically is seen fishing at the very end of the game after committing war crimes. And so they tried to improve upon that, change the formula here and there. But I don't know if it was that much of an improvement for Kuja.
Yeah, I think that they give him that moment of saving you and kind of having a conversation where he regrets his actions, as opposed to Cypher, where it's just a smash cut from, like, the last time you fought him, he was trying to fucking murder you, and then the next time you see him, he's fishing with his buddies.
Yeah, he throws Renoa into the Adele's chest, and she melds in with the space, which... Yeah, you're right. This is better.
This is much better. And I'm not going to say that, like, this is the moment that made Kuja for me. It was the other ones that really resonated with me. I liked that they tried to give him a little bit of redemption just because I like the character, and working in some humanity, even if it is in a cheap and kind of cliche way. Again, it's just that I'm comparing this to... This might aspire to be a, like, mediocre novel or something, but when compared to
7 and 8,
the other games which aspired to be a Sunday morning cartoon at best, like they if they were Dragon Ball Z for half a second, they were fucking stoked. And this game is aspiring to be like a step up, I feel like.
You're right, Gino. I mean, when we look at it for the purposes of our series, Kuja is this slow, gradual progression from Sephiroth, Ultimecia, and then now we have Kuja. And so the fact that they tried, I know that sounds incredibly condescending. The fact that they tried is an improvement over everything that has happened prior to this. Because everything prior to this, what did we have? We had cackling villains, mustache-twirling villains, people who were just evil for the sake of it. So, yeah, it's superficial, but it kind of highlights to my slightly condescending but ultimate assessment of Final Fantasy IX. It's a spectacle. It's a superficial spectacle. You have to turn off the logic part of your brain, but once you do, you can enjoy the spectacle for what it is. And it's no better or worse than, say, an action set piece in a Christopher Nolan film or a Michael Bay film.
I don't like those two directors you just used, but okay.
If we're talking about providing spectacle,
Chris Nolan's fine. The second
yeah,
one.
because all right, yeah, we can all take a shit on Michael Bay a little bit. That's fine.
He doesn't care. He's not hearing this.
No. Okay, fine.
His ears are full of $100 bills.
Erase, strike from the record my comparison to Michael Bay and just say Christopher Nolan.
That's fine.
The idea of creating visual spectacles that are superficial in terms of their story-based scaffolding, but once you accept them, you can really see the worth and the value to them.
Yeah. And once you get past the Makoto section and kind of the Kuja stuff, I think is where I said wait to the ending and then make your judgments. And it's just how Vivi, the fucking heart of this story, ends, basically. You go through kind of these series of vignettes summarizing what's happened to all of the different cast members since Zidane's gone away. You have Freya kind of... Well, I guess let's go through each of them. And first of all, did you find that structure worked for you at all?
Yeah, it worked.
I liked it
When you
because
say
I like
structure,
it.
like the returnee.
The vignettes,
Okay.
the vignettes interspersed with these larger thoughts.
Okay.
I liked it because I like it when things have closure, and I thought that this was the nice bow on top of lots of little sort of storylines.
So you have Garnet ascending to the throne and kind of becoming the queen she was always meant to be. You have Eco getting adopted
By Sid?
by Sid
Sid.
and his wife.
Yep.
And you see Sid and his wife kind of coming to an understanding. They've finally patched up whatever their problems were. But I liked that Eco's, after her like weird romantic side plot, I like that they basically settle on her real problem was that she was lonely and that she needed parents.
Sure.
And they kind of grant that to her. You get Freya and Fratley trying to rebuild Burmecia. And I love that, again, he never remembers who she was, but he falls in love with her again, which is a nice...
I thought it was that, and
corny
also
thing.
she's willing to... I thought it was more powerful that she's willing to deal with his mental illness because she still cherishes the relationship that she has with Fratley.
Yes. I enjoyed that sequence. I enjoyed Steiner and Beatrix kind of... Steiner convincing Beatrix not to retire because they could defend Alexandria together, and that can be their kind of joint cause. Quina gets to
Be a chef.
Be a chef, working in the kitchen, cooking for friends, because cooking for friends is better than cooking for yourself. Amarant is just kind of dicking around.
Well, he gets back with that girl, right?
Yeah.
Him and Lonnie
I guess...
roll together.
Vivi has 30 kids, something like that.
Yes, you get Vivi's kids. And so Vivi's kids, all of these different moments I feel are an answer to... They are the other answer, the non-melodramatic answer to the why go through any of this life stuff if it all comes to an end and we all turn to ash. Like, each of them kind of have their own answer to that question, and they're shown in the vignettes. Like, Vivi, you have a progeny. You have a next generation that you're passing down information to. You have a family. You have relationships, love. You have rebuilding a country. You have companionship, like Lonnie and Amarant. You have, even just entertaining people, like Quina. All of these different moments that kind of add spice to life and kind of make it all worth it. And then in the background of all of this, you have Vivi kind of giving one of the best speeches that I've seen. Just kind of his deathbed speech, I feel like is actually worth a damn.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
correct. Because it's for a character that we care about, and the game has spent a great deal amount of time building our sympathy towards. So when we realize that this is the last that we're going to hear or witness them, you are more attentive and patient towards what they're trying to say. When it was someone else trying to do a soliloquy a deathbed soliloquy, if I don't have the emotional connection, I'm going to be less receptive towards it and less willing to accept it.
I like the structure, sure. My only problem with the way the game ends is as sort of a repudiation of nihilism or death or what have you. It's so based on heteronormative futurity. Like, it's all about, how do I phrase this? It's all about children, basically, or sort of establishing these nuclear family structures that allow for this reproductive move into the future. So, I get why they do that. They don't want to do like a deep sort of queer theory. Like, no, let's challenge the very idea of futurity. That's not what the game's about. But I was a little disappointed that it all is based, for the most part, on finding a woman having children.
Well, I think that Vivi like Vivi's segment actually pushes back on that a little bit due to the nature of his character. So the Black Mages are not made biologically. They are constructed. They are artificial constructs. So all of those Vivi children weren't made via traditional procreation. They were made, someone had to turn those machines back on to make more Vivis.
Right, but I get what you're saying, Gino, but before you sort of go too far down this path, it's still a reproductive dream. So even when you're dealing with these sort of alternative means, those are alternative means that would allow other populations to participate in heteronormative futurity, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure, I understand.
Okay.
It's just I think that the idea of leaving your imprint on your companions and such that they would go out of their way to create simulacrums of you, even if it's a heteronormative futurity, I think it's not there. It is not based solely in heteronormativity. It is a futurity. It is childbirth, but it is not necessarily.
Okay.
It is more, I guess, rooted in friendship and I would say familial bonds, but it's kind of, it blurs the line between friends and family.
All right.
In a way.
I'm putting a bit more of a negative spin on it, and I would persist with my negative spin. But you've made a fair distinction, Gino. That's a good point.
So every time I see that last sequence with Vivi kind of summing up all of his different thoughts, it always chokes me up. But I just love that sequence. And then you kind of get the very last sequence, which is kind of all the characters coming back together. They put on the play that was disrupted at the beginning of Disc 1. And
that scene goes on for way too long.
And Zidane's kind of an asshole for doing that in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, the love of your life thinks you're dead, and this is how you reveal your life to her.
And so you get this play. Zidane is kind of coming back to where he the play that the game started with. Yeah, he's kind of a dick for stringing everyone along.
Right. He would have to make an entrance too. Like, that's the sort of tool he is.
Yep.
And that scene is so long. It's like, oh god, I get what you're trying to do. The masked guy is totally Zidane. I can see this happening. And I remember just saying to myself, please, God, no, don't have the guy who's wearing the robe be Zidane. That would be the most typical, generic thing you could possibly do. And it totally is. It's like, do something different. Like, he comes up to her and he taps her on the shoulder and it's like, this is a good play. What do you think?
Yeah, and they get that last callback, no squall or cloud shall tear us apart, or whatever. They do the Final Fantasy 7 and 8 callback. Everything's coming together, and then, it's Zidane, and they end up together, and they have their nice last sequence. You know, how did you come back? I had to come back. I promised you I would. Like, I had to come home to you, I think was the final line.
Yeah.
And if that line, as cliche as it fucking is, I still like the idea that ultimately it's about kind of finding your home and going back to it.
Yeah. I wanted to hate it, and in a lot of ways I did, but you can't help but sort of get a little warm glow in your in your heart at the moment.
And then the J-pop comes in, Melodies of Life.
Okay, no, there was something you said that line resonated with you. Do you know which line resonated with me?
No cloud or squall shall.
No. Smash cut to black. Game asks the most poignant question it's ever asked. How did you survive? And the first thing that pops up, I didn't have a choice. I see that, and I was like, game, you know me better than I know myself.
Yeah, so we're done. We're done with this game. So first I want your takes on it now that I can't say there's more. And then I have some things to say afterwards. So give me your final takes.
I don't know how to rank this. What?
We can do the rankings after.
Okay, sure, no problem. No problem. I got my T-chart all set up.
Okay.
I would say I would rank it as, in terms of the emotional gravitas of this scene and many other scenes, I don't think that I found that consistent Final Fantasy experience that I think it's pretty well known that I prefer a structure. I have been someone who's taught English class to middle school kids, and I teach them the heroic cycle and to follow the format, and that creates a emotionally resonant story that matters to the audience, and it fits with the audience very well. And I don't think that Final Fantasy followed that format. I don't think that it needed to follow that format, but there are little bits and pieces to Final Fantasy IX that either should have been excised or just removed. And looking back in it, because I listened to our podcast before this one, and one of our biggest complaints was, how much do you excuse a game that gets really good by the last handful of hours? Or you can even argue that it's even earlier than that. How do you excuse that when it's so painfully slow in the beginning and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel or the carrot at the end of the stick or whatever metaphor for...
The carrot at the end of the stick? That's never been a metaphor for anything.
Carrot tied to a stick.
I think it's the same argument something you make for like almost any anime show that ends up being really good. There's like a kind of a hook in the very beginning. Maybe there's something interesting. In many cases in Final Fantasy, it's like you said, ZP, some kind of MacGuffin tropey thing. And then there's many hours of just like, okay, one mission after the next, what the fuck is going on? And the very end gets good. So by the time you're finished with the game, your most recent experience is the best. Maybe that's a facet of the design. Like maybe it's intended that way, that you just you get sent off with some good vibe to maybe like you're saying, cover up the fact that they just put in tons of content for content's sake.
Yeah, and you're right, and I realized that going in, especially as someone who used to at one point review anime editorially. Oh, that was a dark time in my life. But yeah, I accepted 9 in a way that if you had asked me on the first podcast, I did not anticipate accepting it. And there's an innate beauty and an innate wonderment there. Like, my favorite part of 9 is the fact that as I played this game, I got a clear sense of glee. Like, the developers put their heart in this video game. And there was no malice, no sarcasm, no nihilism. They put every positive emotion into this video game. And you feel it. Maybe not every step of the way, but you see the heart and the soul of the game. And sure, the direction that it goes in, maybe you didn't like it, but there's not a single ounce of malice in this game. In terms of, there's no cynicism in this game. It was made with a pure vision of trying to give you this story, and maybe you don't think it works. But they didn't make this as a cash grab. They didn't make this as a, fatalistic new entry in this franchise that means a lot to people.
The 9th entry in this franchise.
It's almost like they did have the fan service in here, but the fact that it's the 9th entry, it tries to stand on its own laurels so often that you really don't think that this is just another game in this franchise. You really do feel like they created a world. They created characters. They tried to ferret those characters down a path. Sometimes it's bumpy. Sometimes it snakes left and right when you think it should go just straight. But it's the most honest game I've ever played my entire life.
Pete, what did you think? Did it eventually win you over, or are you still like, why the fuck did I play this?
I think it's a fine story. I think it's admirable in its way, in some of the ways you described, Gino, but I think it is a shit game. I think in terms of entertainment value, it's just not there, but I do appreciate the moves it's making, especially from the sort of disability studies perspective in the way you've been articulating. So no, I would never play this game again. I'm not particularly happy that I did play it, but I can respect it for some of the same things you do.
And Billy?
I, in general, enjoy Final Fantasy games because I'm able to at almost any time of the game go any direction I want. And I think we can agree that there's lots of things to explore in this game. I need to look at Final Fantasy IX and my playthrough of it right now with a huge grain of salt, because I, in many ways, couldn't do a lot of the things that I want, and I know I sound like a broken record when I reiterate that particular point. I think that this had some of the most meaningful character developments, and I think in comparison to what it just came off of, 7 and 8 just annihilates those stories in terms of development of characters that you actually care about.
Yep.
So I definitely that Final Fantasy IX definitely scores some points with that for me, and I would be more interested in replaying this game later, not necessarily because I want to actually do the side quests and have a real playthrough of this game on my own terms, because I want to go see the developments that I missed, because I played through this game
Too quickly.
in many cases at a breakneck speed, so I can make sure that I was caught up when I had technical difficulties and stuff. So I think that I missed a lot of stuff that would make me care about it. So the parts that I liked, and I don't want to I don't want to speak too harsh on the parts that I disliked, because I feel like I didn't get them in the context that I would have gotten them, which is surrounded by all the things that I enjoy about long, grindy RPG games. So I'm going to suspend full judgment until I get to properly play Final Fantasy IX. But I think that this, if I do get another proper playthrough, will rise among the top 2 or 3 Final Fantasy games that I've played so far.
Okay. So thanks everyone for playing it. I'm gonna get heavy for a sec. ZP, did you read the article I wrote?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so the reason why I wanted you guys to play this, Pete and Billy, and ZP, we're bound by a blood oath to play these games.
A blood oath that...
Destiny bond.
Yeah, but the reason I brought you guys in was not just because this is my favorite game, period. That's one reason, but also because my grandpa passed away this year, and this game for me is a whole lot more than playing this game. Like, the first time I played this game, my mom was dying of cancer, and I was in a really bad place emotionally when I came to this game, when I rediscovered Final Fantasy IX. And seeing a game that is so earnest and so just non-cynical and radical in its rejection of despair, while acknowledging that there are plenty of reasons to be upset, and not be dismissive of those reasons. To say that, yes, these things are terrible, but there are good reasons to continue in spite of those facts. It was something that I really needed to hear when I first... It wasn't when I first played this game. It was probably the second or third time I played this game. I came across it when I was in high school, and that was when I really fell in love with this game. And the day my papa passed away, the 2 things I did was I went and played basketball by myself for like an hour or 2, and then I came home and I played this whole game from start to finish. And this is the game that I play when things are bad, to make me remember that, like, everything can be okay. That you can kind of soldier on through bad stuff. And I just really needed to play this game again, and I needed an excuse to play it, and I wanted to share it with some of my best friends in the world. And so I'm really happy that you guys joined me in this. And it's just it's hard for me to articulate, make clear how much this game is specifically impactful to me, just because a lot of weird themes in this game oddly line up with stuff in my life because of my biography. Like my papa who passed away, his name was Gino Grieco. I am literally named after the person who passed away. The end of this game has Vivi, who is followed by more Vivis. Identical in every way, because he was so important to someone as to be brought around again. I am a child of immigrants. Like I'm third generation, and the idea of kind of not knowing where your home is, whether it is the place where you live or the place where you were born or the place where your family is from, what does that mean to a person who is kind of in flux in terms of where their citizenry lies? And Zidon's story of, is he a person of Gaia? Is he a person of Terra? Where the hell does he fit in all of this when he's kind of neither? A lot of these themes deeply resonated with me in a way that just doesn't, I'm willing to acknowledge, is not communicable to other people. But getting to experience this and kind of share it with some people that I really care about and have this conversation and have everyone be on equal footing is something that I've never had the opportunity to do before. And thank you so much for sticking with this long, somewhat unwieldy thing. It means a lot.
Equal footing?
Well, you guys at least...
I say we play through it like
Gino,
13, 14 more times, maybe.
So, Gino, I read both of the articles. I love you, man. You forgot to warn me you put a fucking Final Fantasy X spoiler in one of those articles.
I'm sorry, but you'll be fine. That's not that's not
I'm
a
just
spoiler.
joking.
You find that
I'm
out
joking
very
with you,
early.
man.
You find that out very early.
I'm also joking. No, your article also reminded me how often this franchise relies on the fear of death or the passing of a person as a rallying cry, especially when you look back at 7. And you could even argue that there's parts of it in 8. But no,
I mean, it's a game that's a post-war environment where everyone's an orphan. Like, that's 8. 9, 10 is also broken homes. Like, I wrote like 3 different essays on how these games are constantly using broken homes as a starting ground for adventure. And it means a lot to me. So I know, like, this game is not super fun to some of you, and like, I just really needed to play it again. So,
and Gino would have been worth it just for that, even if the game weren't super fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Dealing with us, biting your tongue when we said things about a game that means so much to you.
It's fun. Like, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. You don't have to love it as much as I do. It won't change my opinion of it one way or another. I don't know.
Also, just having a game like Final Fantasy IX, which does mean a lot to you, being brought into such critical and in-depth and scrutinized spotlight is an act of love in and of itself. So even though we may have had disagreements or had bones to pick with the game, the fact that we will acknowledge them and like appropriately analyze them is far more loving than being apathetic.
Yeah, and thank you for, like, I don't think we're gonna give that respect to every game we play, but
I don't think we've respected most games we played.
Oh God!
Hey, Sonic Chronicles:
the Dark Brotherhood. We're looking at you.
If we tried to stretch Undertale across 4 podcasts too, I would have quit. I think a single episode in.
We can't. That game's not long enough. But it's been a hard year for me outside of some of the brighter spots. And the very bright spots. Some of the brightest spots in my life have been this year.
You had a pretty bright spot.
I did.
Yeah.
I've had several very bright spots.
I can recall at least one.
Yes,
yeah.
But this game really resonates with me in a way that is. I assume that other works of fiction in adolescence resonate with other people. This is my one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have that game. We all have that one game that resonates with us in a way that it's sometimes hard to explain. And then Full disclosure, I feel like I have that relationship with wrestling matches with the WWE, and it's really hard to explain that because when you're someone who really likes wrestling or the WWE, whenever you want to show them that match that means a lot to you, oh man, don't, because it will break your goddamn heart. Trying to no, he's grabbing onto the rope. That's just something that happens. He's wailing around like a maniac. That's just that. Okay, but look. Ric Flair had a retirement match against Shawn Michaels, and as he's about to do the super kick, he says, "I'm sorry, I love you," and that is the deepest relationship I have had with something ever. But no, yeah. So, Gino.
So
I
now
think
now we have to decide where it ranks, right, ZP?
So we should warn Pete and Billy. Pete and Billy,
Yeah.
you are a part of an experiment that Gino rope-a-doped me into. And if you guys ever find out we're playing a Final Fantasy game you want to join, doors wide open.
I don't want to find out because I'd rather not have the option. This is one of those times where giving somebody the option is actually worse.
Maybe we'll play 10. Maybe we'll play 10 too. Maybe we'll play something that you want to join in. The doors open.
I would be down to play 10.
Doors
you can play 15
doors wide
soon.
open.
I started 3 and 4. I didn't finish either of them, but I started them.
Hey man, doors wide open. All right, so purpose for this blog series is Gina and I are on a quest to play at least 1 or 2 Final Fantasy games every year. That means that we're going to be done in about 30 years. Fantastic. So as it stands, the science that we have delved into, the deep, hard science of theorems and postulates and hard evidence is currently Final Fantasy VII is first.
Is the greatest
as the
Final
greatest
Fantasy game.
Final Fantasy game ever created. And we have in second Final Fantasy VIII, the worst Final Fantasy.
Just going in order right now.
So
we must rank 9 in accordance with these other games.
Where's
correct.
Is Crystal Chronicles on the list?
no,
No,
because
No, it's just canonical.
we're doing the mainline series first,
Some
and we will do
entries.
all that side quest nonsense. People
Later.
trying to convince
Because I really want to know where Dirge of Cerberus
you
falls.
shut your mouth, because people have actually asked me to play Dirge of Cerberus. So you
Hey,
be quiet.
I have played Dirge of
he has
Cerberus, and I
told
will
me-
happily replay that game.
Gino has warned me of your ridiculous claims of Dirge of Cerberus,
That
and I am
game
not
is
prepared. No,
fine.
it is not. You're gonna tell me. You're
That
gonna
game is
tell me you have
fine, like,
PlayStation 2, and you're gonna say that Dirge of Cerberus is better than SOCOM or any of the other great shooters. Siphon Filter.
Dirge of
Which one of those
Cerberus-
games has Mako?
Time
There's
Splitter?
none, because you don't need to have. Okay, so
All right, no.
Gino.
ZP, I just totally Spider-Maned the thread, so let's just bring it back. We were
What?
doing a ranking. Forget
Okay.
Dirge of Cerberus.
Spider-Man?
So, I do 2 things. We have the rankings. Right now, it's Final Fantasy VII is number 1, and Final Fantasy VIII is number 2. Starting, Final Fantasy IX. Gino, I think we can skip this step. I do not think Final Fantasy IX is the worst game.
Yeah, I think we can skip comparing it with 8 in any way. I think
But
it's just better than 8 in a lot of ways.
There's 2 things that I think that Final Fantasy VIII does better than Final Fantasy IX.
The music.
1, the music and thinking Final Fantasy VIII is better. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but
I like listening to the music in 8 more.
It's
when
tranquil.
individual tracks. I will listen to 8 from start to finish when I'm working to just have music on in the background. I feel like the highs in 9 are higher.
I think
feel
that
like-
it's a more consistent thing. I think that it's more tranquil. It creates this idea that there's more a nefarious element to it. I think 8 is just an easier soundtrack. I think Triple Triad is better than
Tetramaster.
That's not
Tetramaster.
we don't have to have a conversation about that. Yes,
But
that's
here's the last
objectively
thing,
true.
and I think that you and I are going to get into this, the fisticuffs. I'm going to argue this. I think Eyes on Me is better than Memories of Love.
Melodies of Life,
I
and
love
yeah,
it.
I'm fine with that. Melodies
Okay,
of Life is fine.
great.
They're both bad.
No, I think that I warmed up to Eyes on Me in a way that I wake up sometimes. And I'm humming Eyes on Me because of you, Gino.
Let me put it to you this way. I wake up sometimes. I am humming Eyes on Me more often than I'm humming Melodies of Life. So Yes, I'm
You
fine
know
with
what
all those
happened?
three things being better.
This
but
is an embarrassing confession. Today, I woke up and I was literally, honestly, I had "You Are Not Alone" stuck in my head. So I know that this is going to happen to me. Like, I'm just going to...
That?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so
You're
8...
ruining my life, my quality of life. This is what this
Or improving, who's
fucking
to say?
podcast. So, now we have to determine, using science, 7 versus 9. Okay, so 7.
I can weigh in on this too.
Okay, I'm going to argue this. I
Seven's a better
still
ring.
think that with 7, I can see your... I can still say with a level of certainty that 7...
Choose your words carefully.
How
about I go? Do you want me to go first, ZP?
Sure. I'm trying to
All right.
word this in a way.
Because Gino knows that I played 7 and I played enough of 9 to make a comparison, but I feel like my opinion is just going to matter less between the Gino ZP like blood pact. So I'll just go ahead and throw in my 2 cents, and if it falls on one side of the scale and balances something, then whatever. I've just caused chaos. Okay, great. So I think about visual aesthetics goes to 9. Not really a fault of
I would
7,
agree
but
with
sorry,
that.
you
Visual
just got
aesthetics.
made what?
Put that on the. I'm going to put it on the column. I think that's the best way to put it. Visual aesthetics.
Visual aesthetics go to
Okay.
9. That was kind of a freebie. It was just made years later with better technology, so it's just a prettier piece of art to look at. Okay.
Sure.
I think some of the music from 7 sticks with me more than the music from 9. I have listened to some of the music from 9, but I haven't played it in game.
Also
Like I said, I
fair,
played on
you
muted.
can
I would
mute.
like to strike
Yeah.
the record because he played most of the game. I would argue that 9 has a superior soundtrack to 7.
I guess I have more nostalgia for 7's music.
Dangerous Temptress.
Case
Nostalgia.
in point for me is that I mentioned some of the other podcasts that I played. I'm starting to learn an instrument. I'm playing piano, and when they said, "Hey, you know what? You've gotten good enough in piano to bring in your own sheet music," I brought in Cosmo Canyon theme.
What the fuck?
Not Eris theme?
Nope.
What are you doing?
Fuck.
Not the
I
Rough
was
Riders anthem.
I wanted the Red 13 theme music.
He's the worst character.
It's
I
fine,
I
it's
like
fine.
that
Let it
music
go.
the
Let
most.
it go, ZP.
Oh
Let him have
God.
it.
I wanted it.
Let him
And
have
look,
it.
anyway, so music
Roses
sticks a
by
little bit more with
Outkast.
me
That's
for
another
7.
great choice.
Roses by Outcast.
I think that I'm going to draw a weird comparison between the materia system and the abilities system through items. I actually like the materia system better because I could develop and grind out skills that I could give to my other characters. So even though I love grinding, I had to do less of it to get what I wanted in Final Fantasy VII. So I could do more things in Final Fantasy VII, like fight weapons if I wanted to.
Okay, Gino. Straightforward combat goes to 7.
Yeah, it's well, actually.
Got it. Yep.
I don't know.
Nope.
Wait. No, because I think the materia. All of your characters in 7 are materia receptacles.
I'm putting
but
it on. That's
No.
how I feel.
9. Each of the characters has very easily determined roles in combat, and you just kind of know what the hell they do.
They have
for the
roles,
most
but
part.
then you have to learn the abilities, and then those are permanently stacked into your abilities thing. But
Yeah, but
then
you
have
learn
to
them by
use
just-
those abilities, and then you have to assign those abilities with. So learning them isn't the same as assigning them with gem points. And
Then
then
let me say it like this. I felt like I had more agency in what my characters could do in 7.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like they
Yes.
Okay, agency goes in 7.
Yeah,
I-
definitely. I mean, 9. They're structured. They are.
it's
They are.
it's
their
okay.
character
I'm
class.
not saying that it's a bad system in 9. I'm just saying the one that I liked better for my play style was 7. Matter
Yeah,
of
that's
taste.
Totally fine.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Strictly matter of taste. Character
Player
development, I think, is better in 9. I think story is better in 9. So, I think it's going to be really hard, but I think as of right now, for me, I think 7's going to maintain rank 1 until I play 9 properly. And then it really might knock 7 out of the top. So I'm gonna stick with 7 for now. But if I can play 9 properly, 9 could dethrone 7 and rank 1 right now.
We need a 2/3 vote. I'd like to strike Billy's claims as a result of not playing the game legitimately from the record. Do I have 2 other votes?
That's fine.
2. Okay. So Billy's comments are officially stricken from the record.
Great.
Okay.
I like them, Billy. I appreciated them. Thank you
Great.
for making them.
Here's what I
want
want
to
to
have my
say.
opinion out there and just completely disregard it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I still think there's something to Midgar. I think Midgar is still the most fully realized level in a Final Fantasy game we have ever played.
I think Limblom and Alexandria compete with Midgar.
Oh, that introduction to Midgar, it's just tone and mood all in
The introduction
one
to
place.
Alexandria.
Dude,
This
not
gigantic
even.
city.
When it pans to, and then it pans slowly from Eris's face and pulls out, and then it goes up the Shinra headquarters, and then it's just this giant metropolis, and then Final Fantasy IX right there, and then you got it. You got a sense of place, direction. You know that the evil company's over there. You know that everyone else lives in the shitty pizza over here.
Yeah, but in 9, the things that happen to each of those places and the growth and the... Like, you leave Midgar and then you come back in a parachute, and Midgar doesn't change. Midgar doesn't change. Midgar is still that awesome slum.
No parachute sequence. There's a parachute sequence in 7. I'm going to put that on the record.
That is true.
I also want to put one more thing on the record. Even though it's going to be disregarded, I feel like it should at least be heard first and then disregarded. I think Final Fantasy VII has the better Cid.
Yeah, I would actually argue that.
There's a Cid in every Final Fantasy. I think that's going to be a line of comparison.
Gino, you like the Cid in 7. Don't
Final Fantasy VII Cid is better than Cid in Final Fantasy IX.
I don't know. 9, he's a frog. That's pretty great. He's a frog.
Isn't he an Oglop? Is that the same as a frog?
Swears in 7, Gino. He swears. He has that really great scene where he's like, maybe it's science. Wait, I really just wanted to go to space.
But he's a player in 9.
A card player. He's a Tetramaster player.
He's a Tetramaster
That's got to be a
player,
point against.
And he sleeps around. He's both kinds of player. He plays all sides. So
Does he bamboozle from all angles?
he does. And he's got that mustache.
There's no debating it. Billy mentioned it, and I know I struck it from the record, but I'd like to officially say that 9 has a better story.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And 9 has a better villain.
I would.
I really
There's
like
something
Sephiroth.
pure about Sephiroth, though. I've
The
never
problem,
even played
you
Sephiroth.
guys need to realize, like, go back and play 7. Like, the whole Genova stuff is so convolutedly stupid.
It's so dumb. Like,
You're right,
So
it's
dumb.
dumb, but I feel like it's so true to itself. It never, ever betrays itself.
So
And I feel
what
like 9
truth is there to the fact that there's this alien head that he's carrying around and throwing around random body parts that spout
Who cares,
or
man?
sprout
It's all
into...
Gucci.
You just dismiss the
That's a
fact
great
that
point, Billy.
50% of the story in 7 doesn't make sense, and the only reason why Sephiroth is a villain is because he does villainous things. There's no
he's a
depth to
lunatic.
that.
That's it. He's crazy.
He's
so
crazy when he
crazy,
found out
he's
he's a tube baby.
Kuja has pathos.
At least
Kuja's-
pathos. Maybe next time we can get some ethos and logos.
Might be Bathos, but
Whatever. He's got thos. He's got those thos. Kuja's better. Come
Okay.
on. You know it is.
Billy,
That monkey tail.
or Gino and Billy, how about this? 9 doesn't have snowboarding.
Yeah.
horrible
It doesn't have
minigames.
snowboarding.
No
It doesn't
minigames.
have
I mean, you can say Chocobo Hot and Cold is a minigame, but I would even say that
That's
is
a
better
side
than
quest. It's opt-in.
no story minigames.
No, wait. ZP, are you for or against them?
I'm 100% against them because that snowboarding sequence is some bullshit.
He's against them when they're bad.
I'm for them.
Nope.
So we disagree here, ZP. It's okay. We can't agree on everything. We love to gang up on Gino, but I'm gonna have to.
Tell me what part of the snowboarding minigame you enjoy.
It's not the snowboarding minigame. I like the fact that the game said we're going to take a pause from the humdrum of a Final Fantasy RPG style game,
and we're going to be SSX tricky for a second.
We're just going to
and then they're going to handle.
We're just going to be 1080 snowboarding for a hot minute.
We're going to be the worst version.
Bad.
We're going to be, and they had like a motorcycle racing sequence too. Yeah,
that sequence is terrible.
It's really different. Let you play a different game for a while and just take a break.
A different game that is never a part of the story ever again. So you learn these controls, and then it means jack shit ever again.
But they were really big into the motorcycle scene in Final Fantasy
like
Advent
Fort
Children.
Condor. Fort Condor's like the worst fucking
them.
tower defense game I ever played. Oh my god!
Does Final Fantasy 9 have Golden Saucer? I feel like that place is pretty great.
Golden Saucer is the most narrative shattering. Like, man, we just saw some real dark shit in the game.
ZP, don't engage.
And then all of a sudden,
just put the point in 9's column. We need to work through some things.
No story minigames. No story minigames. No Don Corneo. No.
There's no rape. There's no implied rape.
There's no sexism.
There's less sexism.
Less sexism. Okay.
I feel like Zidane.
There's no bathhouse scene.
There's no bathhouse.
Yeah, there's no bathhouse scene.
That's pretty great. At no
Don
point.
Corneo is like the worst thing. Like
Zidane is. Everyone acknowledges that what he's doing is creepy. That's pretty great. Like he's treated poorly for his poor treatment of women. I feel like all the side characters are better in 9, except for Quina, maybe.
One thing I would probably say in terms of in favor of 7, I miss crazy enemy design characters. You know how like there's just this giant toy box house or the giant sign with the stop hand? I miss stupid random encounters, like super crazy stupid shit in my game.
Just look that have no bearing on the other.
Yeah, man. Am I wrong in saying that?
Monster.
I also
stacking nulls.
I miss crazy status or abnormal status effects. Remember Toad?
Yeah. Toad's pretty great. There's Trouble. Trouble's a weird one. Like you're real sad, and so when you take damage, your whole party takes damage in 9. But, yeah,
so,
I'm fine with saying that that's a positive, but I would also say then you have to give 9 a counterpoint. Its enemies fit within the larger world design.
I'm willing to do that, because we want to differentiate these two games. So Crazier...
7, clearly.
Crazier. And then 9... 9 would be... You said cohesive?
Cohesive
enemy design.
Would you say that the presence of Melodies of Life is a positive over the fact that 7 does not have a J-pop anthem?
Absolutely not.
A club banger.
I would probably put in 7 no J-pop.
Well, then let's not talk about this.
Okay, fine.
A different thing.
Okay, I mean, we normally look at protagonists, and this is going to be a weird thing because I believe that the protagonist is Zidane, and Gino, you believe the protagonist is Vivi.
Pete and Billy, where do you stand on this? Who do you think is the actual protagonist? Or can they both be the protagonist?
I think that Zidane is what advances the plot, but the story matters most to Vivi. Now,
well, it's their goddamn problem for having the best story associated with a side character, but the character who has the greatest agency with the story and moving it forward is Zidane.
He's the one that just pushes the events forward. I think Vivi is...
It's Vivi's world. They're just living in it.
It really is, because he has the most to lose.
Let's get our terms
at every turn.
Then. Let's get our terms straight, and then this won't be a debate anymore. Define protagonist.
The main player character in a story, or the character whose perspective tells the story.
Then it's Zidane. If that's how we're going to define protagonist.
But what if we defined it as the character whose storyline is most encompassed within the time frame of the narrative? Because Vivi is born like a week before the game starts, or a couple weeks before the game starts, and then he dies at the end of the game.
Like, this is, you know what David Hume said? 90% of philosophy is just arguing about terms. This is just going to hinge on how we define protagonist. There's
That's
no
fair.
answer to this
But
question.
let me put it to you this way. Does it really matter which one's the protagonist when Vivi's the best character in any of these games?
I would argue that maybe Cloud is the better protagonist, but Vivi is the greatest character in Final Fantasy ever.
Yes, exactly. So I
Okay.
would say that if you're going to give Cloud points, like Vivi should just have a point all himself because he's better
Sure,
than
okay,
everything
fine.
else.
I can compromise. Cloud is a better protag, and Vivi is the greatest character in a video game ever.
We're getting a little bold with our proclamations all of a sudden.
It
but
got
fine.
way wider.
This is science. This is science. Science is bold, and it leads a
Why
new
stop
direction
here,
for
dude?
life and
Vivi's the
tranquility.
greatest character who's ever been devised in fiction or nonfiction.
Okay, fine. I'll tone down the histrionics, ladies and
Can you
gentlemen. I'm
create
sorry.
characters in nonfiction?
Greatest.
A little heart. That's when a baby's born. That's creating a character in nonfiction. That's what that
Okay.
is.
All right, sure.
So
1, 2, 3.
ZP, what is the score right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you want to call it now?
What is the score?
The score is 7-5 in favor of 9.
Then fine, we can call it now because 9 is ahead.
I hate to say it, ladies and gentlemen, but I would agree. We have 7. Midgar is still a very fully realized level with impact. 7 has a combat system with a greater level of player agency. There are still awesome scenes in 7, such as the parachute sequence or infiltrating Midgar, or the reactor, sorry. It has a crazier enemy design, and Cloud is a better protagonist than Zidane. Over in 9, we have a consistent and visually pleasing visual aesthetic for 9. We have superior character development. We have superior story. We have no story-based minigames. We have less sexism. We have cohesive enemy design. And we also have, after a slight addendum, Vivi is the greatest Final Fantasy character.
There we go.
Final
And
words? Are there
so-
any objections to our T-chart or list?
I
If
love
there
this
was
T-chart.
anything that had to be the final weight on one or the other, I think that's Vivi's role, is swinging the scales into the favor of Final Fantasy IX in any game comparison.
It's like, well,
Compare
Vivi-
Final Fantasy IX to any game. Oh well, you don't
Vivi's
have
not in
Vivi.
Mass Effect. Vivi's not in Mass Effect, so I guess Mass
Fine.
Effect is lesser for his
Yeah.
absence.
Okay. So, we have a final
argue with that.
verdict. After conducting the most thorough
Science.
science possible of the Final Fantasy franchise, we have a new number 1.
Well, let's start out. The worst Final Fantasy game that is gutter trash is Final Fantasy VIII.
Correct.
Boo.
We are stating that, for the record, Final Fantasy VIII is the worst. It's not really the worst. We have yet to play 2. The worst Final Fantasy game ever is Final Fantasy VIII. We are now declaring that the most mediocre, middle-of-the-road Final Fantasy, most mediocre, is Final Fantasy VII. And now, based off of the science of a team of mostly
Experts.
adult men, the greatest Final Fantasy game ever created is Final Fantasy IX.
Yay!
Da-da-da-da.
Da, 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 da. We did
God
it.
damn. We
Well-
spent 50 hours of my life.
We all did.
We all did.
And with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone, but also, ZP, since you joined us on this crazy nonsense, I would like to extend you the offer of picking a game for our regular-ass podcast.
A regular.
I'm cashing in my money in the bank contract because we actually looked back at it. And Gino, I never forced you to play a game after playing 7.
Well, I played 7 alongside you. That was
I feel like that doesn't count.
Yeah, so,
I don't like 7.
gentlemen, for the first time, unprecedented, which, again, thank you so much for having me on your website. Sorry for interrupting you guys whenever You guys tried to talk. So yeah, I'm going to pick a game that if Gino's whole game that he's most desired to talk academically with other people, the game, and it's not even my favorite game, it's actually my most disappointing game. The game that I have most desired to talk academically on a podcast or in any way, shape, or form. You guys already played BioWare's worst game. It's now time to play BioWare's most mediocre and disappointing game. My pick is Jade Empire.
Jade Empire, the Kung Fu epic.
All right.
Is Lu Bu in Jade Empire? No.
He
I don't think
is.
so.
He is. Yes.
Great.
We'll talk about this.
Great. Okay.
Is it on Steam?
It is. It is also available on Good Old Games. It's
And on the
the
Xbox.
special edition. Normally, Gino provides. So here's the weird fact. I know basically BioWare's games forwards and backwards. I'm going to leave you guys to determine which side quests you wish to play. I would say there are 3 that you should definitely play no matter what. 1 is please do the side quests related to the Kung Fu Academy over in the main Imperial Village. 2, please get and resolve the story beat with the children in the orphanage. You will see what I'm talking about. And 3, form a relationship with one of the characters. Because it's actually one of those weird BioWare games where you can actually not form a relationship at all.
Okay.
Did someone write these down? Can you just make sure that we get a written down copy of this shit?
There we go.
Sure, no problem. But just, you know what? I'll even strike from the record forming a relationship.
Because you'll probably do that by accident.
You'll actually, by accident, unless you take your agency, you totally will not form a relationship. The default, and this is the first time in a BioWare game, is no relationship.
Weird.
It also, just to put it out there, it also has LGBTQ relationships. Actually, lesbian or gay. And do the Kung Fu Academy, 100% do that one. And then also, oh no, wait, now I remembered. Spoilers. A character from someone from Monty Python is in as a guest character. It's John Cleese. John Cleese is in this game. Fucking do his side quest. It's amazing. It's one of the only things that I really like in that game. But the children in the orphanage, when you're in, I believe it's after Tien's Landing. So the orphanage scene, there's going to be ghost kids. You got to just follow it through.
Great. Ghost kids in an orphanage.
Ghost kids in an
Welcome to
orphanage.
Scooby-Doo.
Kung Fu Academy, and then also find John Cleese.
Okay.
Okay, fine. John Cleese.
No, it's the
And
only
go to
good thing in that
Bonetown.
game.
And go to Bonetown.
If you can.
Okay. So, thank you, listeners. Remember, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod. You can also hit us up on email, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com, or deeplistens.libsyn.com. Thank you once again, Pete.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. It's a long trip, but I think overall it was worth it.
Thank you, Billy.
Yeah, I'd say in this case, you know that cliche, like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. In this case, I think it's true. I enjoyed this experience, even though it was not on my ideal terms, but I liked being a part of this that is so important to you, Gino. And I think that our listeners are also going to, have a visceral response to this kind of honesty when we talk about games.
And thank you, my brother in this horrible death pact, Zombie.
Ah, man. Well, Gino, I love you, but you've unleashed a Sisyphean torment on my life that I don't think I'll ever recover from.
You're welcome. Okay, so till next time, and just if you, listener, have not played 9 in a while, I'd just like to tell you the PC version is probably the definitive version as far as I'm concerned. You have fast forward, you have turn off random battles, and
The controls are good.
The controls are good, and the videos are in they're in full HD. They are uncompressed. So if you want to jump back in, there has never been a better time to play Final Fantasy IX. So, till next time, thank you. Peace!